A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ncba Workplace Banking webinar themed The Future of Work and Employee Engagement. It is indeed a great pleasure to be hosting you today, and on behalf of the Ncba Group Managing Director, Mr. John Gashora, and the entire Ncba leadership, I would like to appreciate your taking the time to log into this webinar this morning. My name is Emily Kinuthia, and I am the General Manager, Marketing, Communication, and Citizenship at Ncba Bank, and I'll be your MC for today. We have an insightful discussion ahead of us, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to our partners for this webinar, Ultima Africa, together with Great Place to Work, who will be sharing global and local trends around the workplace of the future, as well as a plenitude of human resource expertise represented by our expert bench of panelists who will engage us in the panel discussion. Allow me to set the context for today's discussion. According to a recent study by Deloitte, an estimated 2.7 billion people, or more than 4 out of 5 workers in the global workforce, have been affected by lockdowns and stay-at-home measures. Business and government leaders have been challenged to both respond to the crisis quickly and rethink their workforce strategies in real time. We are now living in an age where distance, disinfectant, discipline, and digital define the boundaries and use of our own personal time and space. A lot of organizations have now been forced to embrace digital to ensure they equip and empower their employees and continue to serve their customers and suppliers through their entire value chain. The biggest challenge organizations will likely face in recovery is the tension between preparing for a return to previous activities and routines, which is getting back to work, while also embracing a new reality, which is rethinking work. It now gives me great pleasure to invite our Group Director, Retail Banking, Mr. Tyrus Mwithiga, to give us the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Emily, and good morning and a warm welcome to all our participants who've joined us for today's Workplace Banking seminar. It's my pleasure to join you this morning, and thank you for your participation. I'd also like to make a warm welcome to my panelists who will be introducing as part of the conversation. I also hope that you and your loved ones and colleagues, since this is an employee banking session, are keeping in this COVID pandemic environment that has had probably the single largest transformation or transformative experience that we faced in our work and our business lives. It has disrupted our customers' ways of life. It has disrupted a lot of the business models that many industries considered well established and mature. And the impact of the slowdown and the subsequent slowdown in economic activity has created a significant amount of financial distress for our customers. In terms of work, it has accelerated the adoption of virtual working. I remember a couple of years ago, asking to get video conferencing facilities on my laptop, but it was reserved for my, seniors. Today it has become commonplace, and it is the way that we are working. Even today's seminar might have been held in a hotel. We find ourselves engaging fairly rigorously and actively on such platforms. And to that point, then, it's created significantly new possibilities, particularly as we all reinvent the way we bank and the way we work. As I've mentioned, different working tools, working from home, the way we train, the way we meet, clearly an impact on productivity. And I know the practitioners of HR who are here will talk more about the impact on employee engagement. But from a business perspective, I note an impact on productivity, on performance. Some operational efficiencies are not working as well as we were used to. And It is a work in progress, as this has settled. We are getting better with this. The retail sector will change significantly as well. And when we look at retail banking in specific, a lot of the ways that we're interacting with our customers has shifted probably years in advance of where we would have gotten there organically in terms of the adoption of digital channels for engaging and transacting. How much of this change will stick depends on a lot of factors. From my perspective, I think the experience that we are offering customers will have a big influence in terms of how we keep and we adopt and we sustain the new ways that we have adopted. I read a recent report from McKinsey that was saying some of the shopping or some of the online or even training experiences are not meeting expectations. We may see a reversion of that. But some where particularly infrastructure is good, we will see that some of those will stick. One thing that is for sure is that I don't think we will get back to normal, whatever normal was, and that's even assuming that normal was working well. And if you look at history, events such as this probably compare to 9/11, and the impact that 9/11, the terrorist attacks in 9/11 changed everything about how people travel, the way planes are designed, the way airports are designed, and the way they function. I believe that this crisis will fundamentally change travel. I think it will fundamentally change the way we deal with hygiene. If you traveled in Asia, you would have noticed people there wore a lot of masks all the time. Every time you have a cold, a colleague in the office or in the train or the bus would be wearing a mask. It has become our normal, and I suspect that we're going to insist when colleagues have, a cold, we'll probably do that. Sanitizing hands, etc., etc. The way education is going to evolve, I think, will be fundamentally different. Online courses before were seen as probably not as premium as the classroom experience. I think we've seen that those people on such platforms have continued studying, and those schools that were capacitized for it have actually thrived in this environment. I believe workplace design will change. We may not all continue working from home, but even when we come back to the office, I believe that the way we've organized our offices before, the way we've interacted in offices before, will change significantly. But most importantly, and since this is a banking conversation around banking people in the workplace, I think the increase in unemployment, and for that matter, the salary reductions that many people in our industries have suffered, will have a fundamental impact on people's financial organization and the way banks like Ncba will continue to support them. I've seen some reports that in economies such as the US, personal disposable incomes will not revert to the normals they were before the pandemic until probably as far as 2024. We've seen unemployment in markets grow up to 15%. The statistics in Kenya are still being processed, but it is thought that there's been hundreds of thousands of jobs lost from the formal sector. And as banks continue to resume and continue to support our customers, we will need to be thoughtful about how we will respond and how we will continue to support employees and companies as we bank individuals that work in the workplace. And how are we doing that? Already banks, Ncba included, has been very supportive in terms of restructuring financial arrangements. We recently announced that we've restructured over 70 billion of facilities for both our individual and business customers. And that is a significant indication of support from partners such as your bankers, that we understand the environment that is going on and that we've got to be responsive and empathetic as we go. I think we will need, as banks, to be closer in our provision of support, and I'll speak about that in a minute. The innovation around product solutions and banking. A couple of years ago, when many banks, including Ncba, introduced credit life covers over personal lending, it seemed like an expensive option to go to. A few years later, we introduced a rider that covered individuals for redundancy, so that if an individual who had a personal loan with a bank lost their job, the first usually 6 or 9 installments would be paid by the insurer. I remember a lot of controversy at the time that we are adding expenses. Today, 100% of our customers in NCBA that have lost a job have benefited from this cover, because we considered it not an option, and it really has proven itself to be really valuable for our customers during this environment. There are additional solutions that I think we need to look at, and we are looking at. Insurance against business disruption has been, for some customers, very beneficial in this environment. For some, it is a realization that it could have been a cost that might have been significantly beneficial during this time. We will continue to offer alternative transaction and engagement platforms. By that I mean online and mobile banking. By that I mean contact centers, web, chat, social media, and even Zoom calls, or Teams calls, or whatever platform that customers are comfortable with. Just a year ago, the expectation was that my relationship manager must always come to my home or office for us to have a meaningful conversation about their finances. I think today we are realizing the convenience of such platforms as the one we're using today can be a very efficient alternative with regard to engaging and conducting business. The nature of advice that we offer will also need to evolve. In the past, people with free cash flows, in Kenya especially, what did we do? We bought a property, we built flats, we bought land. It was supposedly a safe and passive income, I think is the word we preferred to use. I think we've now realized that income is not so passive when your tenant is not paying you rent, and cash is really important during a crisis. I think we will see a reversion to customers considering marketable securities as an option, as a bigger proportion of the way we arrange financial services. And we are organizing ourselves, especially in a group like NCBA, where we've got all the capabilities from our investment bank, insurance business, to be able to support customers. As I conclude, the details of what a recent paper by McKinsey called the next normal are still evolving. I think we're beginning to become more certain, however, about where it's going to land. I think we kind of suspect what is never going to go back to normal, as I said earlier. And our employers, such as the ones that are represented here, banks will need to actively adapt and evolve in this challenging environment. And I believe those that do it well will build a very positive future for both their employees, the employees' engagement, the financial health of the people that we all bank and support. NCBA promises to be the financial partner that inspires your growth. For those people on the call listening to me that already trust us to support them on that journey, thank you for that. For those who are not yet on board, we welcome you. And before I finish, I'd like to say I look forward to an engaging discussion with a panel of experts that are here, Sam and Kunle, the HR practitioners of note, Paul from Safaricom, Diana from BAT, and my colleague Monica. I really look forward to an engaging discussion, a lively discussion, where we can all learn how do we adapt in this challenging environment. Thank you for listening to me, and have a lovely day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tyrus, for those great insights and setting the context for what is expected to be our new normal and the commitment from NCBA to continue supporting our valued customers. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce our next two speakers, starting with Mr. Sam Watene. He is the Managing Director, Ultima Africa, and our partners for today's webinar. He brings on board 18 years of consulting experience and is a subject matter expert in strategy, execution, and change management. He will be giving us an overview of the future of work and employee engagement. He will be followed by Mr. Jared Omondi, General Manager, Retail Sales, and our Head of Workplace Banking, who will be sharing on the NCBA customer value proposition around workplace banking. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, and we are very pleased to be here. And thank you, participants, for making time to engage in this very exciting topic. What I'll be looking at is an overview of the future of work. And really where I would like to begin is an experience that many of us have already had. And that's an experience that is a new experience, and what Tyrus is referring to as the new normal. I'm not quite sure the new normal has settled, but really it questions even work itself, and that's where I want to begin. And I'll begin with an experience I had a few weeks ago with my daughter, who's only 7 years old. And we were seated in the sitting room, and all of a sudden she asks me, "Dad, what do you do? What are you?" And I looked at her because I had no clue where this question is coming from. And she said, "Mom is a marketer. You, what are you?" And as I tried to explain, because you can imagine being a consultant trying to explain to a 7-year-old what you do, she then asked the next question. "So where do you work? Do you work for Ncba or do you work for Ultima Africa?" And why I give that example is because of what is work. And what has happened in the new paradigm is that question is very relevant. And I'll just request the presenter to move to the next slide, where we are really looking at work, what work was before. Work was a workplace, a place where when you're leaving home, you used to say, "I am off to work." And that kind of defined part of what we do. Work was actually what we did. Work was a schedule. There I was having a discussion with my daughter, but at what time were we having the discussion? We're having the discussion in times that are typically described as these are times for work, the 8 to 5 a kind of concept of work. Interesting enough, work was also who we did it with. It was about our workmates. That's why we refer to them as workmates. And work was also a technology. Earlier in the week, she walked up to me and said, "What are you doing?" She's still very curious about this whole consulting concept. And there I was working on the computer, and I told her, "I'm working," because work is also seen having that technological aspect. And what has happened is that work is no longer what it used to be, and that's the reality of it. Work was very well described in job descriptions, very elaborate with all the English that we can find. But when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, many HR leaders did not focus on those job descriptions. They actually focused on the critical tasks. What must needs get done for us to make it through this pandemic? And that has created a whole different focus that for many organizations, they have had to ask themselves the hard question of what really are the critical tasks. Work has also been redefined by technology and digitization. Prior to the pandemic, we used to talk about digitization and technology will actually change and define the future of work. All of us have been thrust into a completely different direction where we are having to use technology even to actually have this session. We're using Zoom, which many of us 6 months ago had never even heard of or never used at all. But it has also meant that the way work is done and the tools that are used have to be quite different. And for business leaders and HR professionals, they're now having to rethink work done at home. And that is the concept when we are looking at work as part of within that context of the future of work. Remote working is a reality, and I take it from Tyrus that I share the same sentiments as him. There are aspects of remote working that are here with us to stay. But I also want to make it clear, there is a distinction between remote working that really looks at people working from home or wherever else they are, than flexi work, which was a concept that had really picked up. Because when you tell me I am in a context of flexi work because I'm working from home, but school has also, and church has moved to home because normally faced at work, I have now brought it home. And that brings me to the next bit of, we cannot talk about employee engagement without talking about the workforce. And aspects that we previously spoke to of an engaged, connected, and productive workforce, then get a whole new dimension. Because how do I get connected with people I don't interact with, physically on a day-to-day? How do I manage productivity if I, as a leader, was a strong believer in Ncba as a management methodology? Management by walking around. Now, am I going to go through different people's homes to actually assess how they are working? How else do I then engage with these people? But there are 4 aspects, and I will actually put it out. A lot of these aspects are actually borrowed from a lot of the research that Great Place to Work has undertaken. And I'll start with the first one. There is a bigger need now to make work more meaningful than ever before, because individuals, our employees, ourselves, we are now asking ourselves, why do I have to do this? Why does it need to be done this way? And there is that big urge to actually make the work make a lot more sense for those individuals and for the organizations themselves. How do we manage performance when people are no longer in one location, when people are actually using all these different systems? So enhancing performance management, and particularly managing productivity, is right now and moving into the future a very big aspect. And we have seen organizations do very interesting aspects, introducing new platforms. For other organizations, they have now taken up aspects of clock-in systems where we want to know, did you actually engage with the organization and engage with work, so that we require you to clock in. Whether you clock in and go to the kitchen and do other things, that's a different thing, but we require you to clock in so that we have an idea that you are actually working much as you are at home. But perhaps 2 aspects that are extremely exciting are organizations have had to rethink work arrangements. And here I borrow that quote from Gartner research, a very recent research that they did, where they said, from the work that they have done, 32% of organizations are replacing full-time employees with contingent workers as a cost-saving measure, where there has been that whole rethink of, yes, we need the work done, but we need to have these people on our payroll. We have defined the critical skills that we require from this workforce. Can we get those skills so that we use them for the time that is required? Do we need to, again, have them on a full-time basis? So do we consider staff outsourcing? Do we consider what the footballers have done for so long, which is borrowing players? Whether if they need a good striker, then they bring a good striker for the season, and they are done with that striker. So probably with organizations, what we expect to see a lot more is new thinking, stuff like interim executive management, where organizations get in leaders who experience come in for a short time, probably to launch a new product or take the organization through a transformation. But there's also a very interesting aspect that comes when we rethink work arrangements, is that we pay for work. A lot of the thinking, whether we want previously, before COVID-19, was we were paying for time, and that was the reality. And that's why we described it from a schedule perspective. Now, you come, you do whatever you have to do, and we pay you for it. Technology firms have done this for ages. If we look at Google, Microsoft, they pay techies to come in, develop a component of the software, and go off. But now that has to become, even for banks, even for manufacturing companies, they now have to think within that context. As I said, the last bit is probably the one that is most thought-provoking, where the employer now has to think of the family environment, and family has become a core part of the organization. So strengthening work-life balance and social impact is now a very critical and important aspect. And many people are now asking the question of, how do we foster employees' financial, physical, emotional, and mental wellness? What we have seen in Kenya is we have quite a number of organizations set up wellness centers within the organization, bringing on board different partners. I spoke to HR leader yesterday, and she was saying their organization has partnered with Mater Hospital to actually ensure that that aspect of health is catered for. Those were not aspects we thought about before. Partnering with counseling centers, partnering with insurance companies, and that is part of the radical thinking that must need to happen. But at the end of the day, the third aspect, we need to reimagine the workplace. How do we creatively optimize the physical space we have? Because the reality of it is, for many organizations, they no longer need the amount of space. We have worked with a client who we have seen do very amazing things in the workplace context. And what they have done is by the end of May, they had made a radical decision of how they're going to reorganize their office. Open floor plan, no longer that open. They are now moving to cubicles, but cubicles well thought through, where you have paneling. And from an infection perspective, it then means that it becomes harder to infect each other. But they have made the decision and said, this is one of the things that we see will remain. They had hired next door a whole compound that they were using as a parking. They released it because they say that collaboration, digital collaboration happens. They have equipped their own employees to use tools like Zoom, where we need to understand that the fact that we have moved meetings online, there needs to be also, digital etiquette, as we are now calling it. Many of us have received some WhatsApp messages that tell us that is lacking in some places. And then the last bit is, how do we ensure that staff work in a conducive, healthy, and secure work environment? And in many of the meetings that we have been attending on Zoom, we've actually realized that a lot of the people are working from their dining rooms. What kind of furniture are they using? What kind of seats are they sitting on? Now, if you think of a dining table and the seat itself, what is it designed for? Probably you're supposed to sit there for an hour. So it does not have the ergonomic design that is required to ensure that it's taking care of your well-being. So all of a sudden, work organizations have to actually think, how do I furnish the home and support the employee so that they can actually work in the kind of environment that they are supposed to? Because of the working anywhere phenomena, you now have people picking their laptops and going to work in a restaurant like Java. How secure is that information that is organizational information? And what are we doing? Because that is an aspect that is truly here to stay with us. So in ending, what are we really saying are the key insights and aspects that will inform the trends, both in terms of future of work, and employee engagement? There are actually 5. The first one is, we ourselves as business leaders and HR professionals have to understand that the responses we undertake, the decisions we undertake, are contextual and largely driven by what Tyler spoke to, the extent of disruption in the industry and for the organization. There are industries that have been disrupted to a very significant extent. What does that mean? That the business remodeling they need to do is a lot more. The radical changes they need to do is definitely a lot more than would be expected. It's dependent on the leadership and the strategic decisions that that leadership makes, taking into consideration the short-term aspects of this revolution, because truly it is, and the long-term as well. But it also speaks to the organization culture and risk attitude. And in terms of organization culture, for all of us, what this whole revolution has made us realize is it must be a purpose-driven culture. We've often described cultures being performance-driven, being customer-oriented, but we are now seeing that whole purpose-driven culture picking up and becoming more prominent. And the last one is, it will also be driven by the employee profile. If what we have are a lot more young and agile employees or the environment we have created is such that those are the kind of people that have been attracted, then we do expect the speed of moving towards this future of work is going to be a lot more. The speed of creating what Tyrus calls the new normal is going to be a lot faster. The other aspect we need to realize, and Tyrus alluded to this, is the pandemic has presented transient and permanent changes. What that really means is we have undertaken short-term interventions to actually deal with the current context, but there are aspects that are going to stay with us. And we need to understand what those aspects are from the three aspects that we have spoken about, which is the work itself, the workforce, and the workplace. Something that is also very interesting is there's a greater need to lead people. So leadership in its fullness really comes to play now. And HR professionals will have to step up to really ensure that the caliber of leadership in organizations is a lot higher, so that the organizations not only survive this period, but actually make it to the next level. And then managing productivity differently. We no longer can manage productivity the way we've done in the past. Of course, the disruption means that organizations will need to adapt to more agile, and I want to emphasize resilient business models. Many of us were believers in Gary Hamel's theory of core competence, where we said, this is what we really focus on as an organization. Many of us were believers in the Toyota theory of just-in-time systems. Some of those things have been totally disrupted. And we have realized you can have an organization that's so lean that when a pandemic hits, it actually does not have the little fat to survive the rigor of the business risks that are presented to it. And that then means that business leaders and HR professionals have to completely rethink the business models. Again, as I said earlier, this will be contextual. And the last bit is that social impact and work-life balance will grow in prominence and importance. And therefore, the organization really needs to think through, how do we ensure that we not only look at the social impact that we've been looking at as something extra that we do, but as part of what we do. Thank you very much for listening in. And what I will challenge all the people listening in is the fact that the beauty of where we are now is, yes, it is a crisis, but never waste a good crisis. Let's make the most of it so that we are the ones who truly define what the future of work is and what the future of employee engagement will be. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll take the opportunity to invite Jared to tell us a bit more about the future of work and employee engagement.
Thank you very much, Sam and Tyrus, and also Emily, for setting the tone right. Indeed, we are talking about the future of a workplace. And in this, there are three parties involved: the employee, the employer, and of course, the society at large. Now, for me, I would want to unpack a little bit more on workplace banking, and in its centrality, we are talking about what workplace banking in Ncba terms refers to and what we offer. So if we can just go to the next slide, please. So we all agree that there's been a paradigm shift, and without a doubt, we need to align. And Ncba has been in this for a while. What we've been doing under workplace banking is that we've been running partnership programs between ourselves and the employers with a view of looking at what kind of financial solutions can we offer employees so that then they're well engaged, they're switched on, they feel the value of working, they can realize the value of what they're working for. So we partner with employers to look at the full life cycle of an employee, right from the time when you are employed. What are your basic needs? Indeed, that is basically, a check-in, check-out account. And we offer this for a free services to help you settle as you start your work journey. As we progress on, we will also be evaluating and seeing, okay, fine, at a certain stage of your work life, what then do you need? Many of us need mobility. We do that by providing you solutions that will enable you to acquire maybe a motor vehicle of your choice. As we go along, you realize that you are growing in family and you need to put, roof over your head. So we do that by providing you a solution in terms of home ownership, whether you want, for starters, low-cost housing or even a high-end housing, depending with the stage of your employment. We have various lending solutions, but these lending solutions have been tailor-made to suit you. Tyrus earlier on has alluded to some of it. And in terms of ensuring their safety nets, we talked about offering solutions such as insurance that ensure that you are well covered, just in case of eventualities that we've seen in the recent past, such as loss of employment, the unfortunate incidences of death. We take that insurance to ensure that we do not, go back to your family telling them, some had acquired an asset and now we need to repossess it by way of selling it, etc. So with that, we use the insurance facility to pay off such kind of facilities. That gives you comfort that even as you get to acquire wealth in the course of your life or your work life cycle, you are certain that there's something that will bequeath your children along the line. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID has proven to us that we need to have a paradigm shift in terms of how we think. Kenya has one of the poorest savings culture. And I think time has come for us to have an honest discussion and see how best can we aid you as an employee to ensure that the shilling that you are earning today, you save for tomorrow. There will be tomorrow. We can't spend everything today. So we have various solutions that we offer under our savings program, from a very simple savings account that again it comes for free, that you can save for either for educational purpose, for your children, or even for yourself. We have other alternatives for those of us who are a little bit liquid, where you can use the fixed deposit accounts either for a short time or a long term, depending again with the purpose of these funds. And what we try and do is we get to interact with employees. The truth is, no one has ever taught us how to use our money. We learn a lot about technical skills, but when it comes to earning and spending, no one has ever taken us to school on how to use our money. And that's where we come in as workplace banking, to ensure that as we are earning in our gainful employment lifetime, we are able to make sound decisions, either one in terms of savings or for investment purpose. Indeed, the only thing you can do for your employee as an employer is to get into partnership with us, to unravel the needs that you have as an employer, to see what kind of intervention from a financial perspective and even from a social perspective, how can we partner as NCBA and you as an employer to the benefit of your employee. So maybe just to look for just some few benefits around workplace banking. If I can have the next slide. As an employer, because I said this is an agreement between ourselves, employees, and an employer. As an employer, these are cost-free kind of services that we offer for you. And we've said we'll offer financial advisory services for free. We offer wellness programs, whether they are mental, not necessarily financial, for free to our employers and employees, just to ensure that our employees are able to plan well for their financials or finances, for events such as education, their retirement, for those of us in advance in terms of their age, to create wills, because many a times you realize that when you pass on, you leave a lot of problems. That's when you realize, oh, Jared had another one and another one, and they all converge, all looking at a very small pot. Why can't you create wills and trust before you are gone? Now, I talked about home ownership. In Kenya, from central bank statistics, we have around 20,000 mortgage accounts. And indeed, even in the government, you find that housing is a key agenda. Why? Because it's important. All of us need a roof over our head. And for us to do that, we need to plan. We need to save for it. We need to identify, okay, fine, what kind of areas will I want to live in? We come by organizing things like, road shows or property tours to help you decide what kind of area you want to live in. Home ownership is one of the single largest investment decision that you can make. And if you don't get it right, you'll cry tomorrow. You note in the recent past, you've seen areas where floods have washed off houses. Why? Because from planning, probably these guys had gone to riparian land. How do we ensure as a bank that we help you through this journey to ensure that you are not encroaching on riparian land, you are not building on a government facility, etc. We take or shoulder that problem when it comes to the loan conveyance to ensure that for sure there's certainty that the investment that you're putting in is sound and you are sure of your investment tomorrow. On the employee side, we take care of your finances. I said from the onset when you're employed to when you'll be retiring. That is, if you'll be retiring ever. Today, things have changed. We know you'll switch jobs. How do we ensure that we safeguard that? We know that tomorrow you will go to become an SME. How do we ensure that we also help you with the tools that you require early in advance, to prepare you for that better future? We do that through financial literacy programs, to ensure that all of us are aligned to our goals. Your goal will be realized through workplace banking. It is very simple to contact us. You just need to drop an email through our workplace banking team at Ncba Group, and we'll get back to you. We are here to serve you. We are open to listen to your needs as they evolve, and we will evolve and walk this financial journey with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam Watene and Jared Omondi, for those enlightening presentations and for giving us great context around the evolution of the workplace and workforce. It is indeed a new normal, and we have to embrace and not only survive, but thrive in it. And I now have the great pleasure of introducing our next speaker from Great Place to Work, who will be sharing with us global and local trends and insights around the impact of the pandemic and the future of work. Great Place to Work is an organization that collects, analyzes, and presents insights on employee engagement and workforce productivity, and their mission is to build a better world by helping organizations become a great place to work for all. Mr. Kunle Malomo is Group Managing Director, Great Place to Work, United Kingdom, Nigeria, Kenya, and Cote d'Ivoire. I now have the pleasure of welcoming Mr. Malomo.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome you to this presentation today. I also want to acknowledge all the people that have presented ahead of me. I represent Great Place to Work, which is a global workforce and employee engagement organization that is focused on ensuring that workplaces all around the world put together programs and initiatives that help to maximize the potential of each employee in the workforce. So today I'll be sharing about the different trends that we're seeing in terms of the future of work. One of the areas that we focus on is on the future of work. I don't know if I can have the slides queued or whether I can share my screen.
Please go ahead and share your screen, Mr. Kunle.
Okay, hold on. Just a second. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes,
Great.
we can.
Great. So I'm going to touch on 6 themes very quickly. I know I have about 20 minutes, and I know we'll take questions later on. And the 6 themes that I would talk about are some of our findings from our Great Place to Work study. We published a study with Fortune magazine in the United States, just this 2020, about the future of work, where we talked about worries and concerns of the employees around automation, the election. I would stay out of that since that is a US-centric issue, and also the recession, which is a global issue. The future of work in Africa, based on some of the work we've done at Great Place to Work across Africa. Automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics, how it's creating concerns in the mind of a lot of employees out there. And the impact of COVID-19 on the future of work, which is probably the biggest driver in terms of shifting paradigm. And then some of the work, research that has been done by some of our clients and some of our partners and some of the secondary research out there from Microsoft, from McKinsey, and then some of the work we've done around the culture of well-being. So again, Great Place to Work, we do a lot of work around, I want to give some context. We survey over 12 million employees every year across 10,000 companies in 98 countries. And we've done that for over 30 years. So we have a ton of data about how we help to create and sustain great workplaces, how we empower employees to go the extra mile, and how we provide the frameworks for managers to be able to translate some best practices in how employees can demonstrate engaged behaviors. So this is a snapshot of all the countries where we have a presence. I'm very pleased to see Kenya there as well. That's one of our latest entry points, a partnership with our colleague Sam. And as I said, we have the largest workforce study anywhere in the world. So we have our hands on the pulse of what's going on with a lot of workplaces. Again, we do recognition for workplaces across Africa, and these are just some screenshots from programs we've done. And so going, with that background, these are some very interesting comments that we've heard from some of the employees of the companies that we survey. And it's very interesting and it's very telling. I like one in particular that says, when my daughter suffered from an autoimmune disease in the midst of a serious recession, I was concerned about the weekly runs to the lab. My manager made sure that I understood that a late arrival or early departure was not an issue. And these are some of the things that we're beginning to see, particularly as COVID has now begun to impact the issue of well-being. A lot of compassion is now being showed in workplaces where it wasn't even part of the agenda. Another one is that I quote, during the recession 5 years ago, we had to close many departments. This from a manager. Most, if not all of the employees were given an opportunity to cross-train or be placed in other departments. They go out of their way not to lay employees off. And again, I think one of my colleagues said earlier about cross-training and preparing your employees for the future of work. What kind of skills do they have? Are they generalists or are they specialists? Are they able to take on responsibilities that allow them to be able to be mobile across the organization? And then the last one, management has a strong set of respect for the value of employees. During the Great Recession, layoffs were minimized by temporary and modest across-board salary cuts, with management even taking steep salary cuts. These are quotes from employees who represent the future of work. And it's very interesting that during some of the most telling economic challenges, that we can get this kind of quotes from employees. And so the question is, what kind of relationships have these companies established with the workforce for them to be able to get this kind of quote? And then we go into some of the more technology-driven issues that are impacting how the workforce is changing. Artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, beginning to create some concerns in the minds of the workforce. This is a little less of an issue in Africa, but we're beginning to see some of it even in sectors that are very technology-driven in Africa. This is a quote from McKinsey. The world of work is changing. Artificial intelligence, automation, robotics will make this shift as significant as the mechanization in prior generations of agriculture and manufacturing. While some jobs will be lost and many others will be created, almost all will change. This is very powerful. So if you think about the work that a lot of people are doing, for example, in my organization, when we started this business, we used to go out and run paper surveys where we would have people fill out surveys with pencils and pens, and then somebody would scan it, and then they will send it to the person that would tabulate it, and then 3 or 4 weeks later will generate results for the client. But today, we run these surveys on mobile apps, on all kinds of devices, on computers. We barely do any paper surveys anymore. The results are right there, and 4 or 5 levels of managers can look at the data as soon as the survey results are closed. So all of a sudden, people that have the skill sets that were tied to how to collect, tabulate, and analyze paper surveys, all of a sudden they're not as necessary as before. So these are the kinds of changes that organizations need to start looking at and saying, for my kind of organization, if I'm a financial institution, where is the industry going? Is fintech going to sector? A lot of things are going electric, you know, be the gas station, be the impact of centers. If you look at it like features of things going on in your car, you don't even have to go into the dealership. And the Tesla, by the way, does not have any dealership. And a lot of people derided that company. But Tesla is now the single most valuable automotive company on the face of the earth. So how do you, as Toyota or General Motors or Volkswagen, begin to respond to that? What kind of future do you see for the kind of workforce that you'll be driving in the future? So again, AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be very transformative. And automation is also going to be very transformative, as well as robotics. But how well are we prepared to embrace a lot of these changes? You know, a lot of people say, well, in Africa, some of these changes are going to take a lot more time. I was fortunate to have grown up in Nigeria, and all through my education till my undergraduate university before I went to graduate school abroad, I didn't have a cell phone. But by the time I came back 5 years, you know, after I had originally left Nigeria, everywhere had cell phones. In fact, there were mobile payment systems. Essentially, the whole technology infrastructure had leapfrogged what I'd experienced just 5 years earlier. And so how do we essentially prepare our workforces to be able to take advantage of some of these changes? This particular slide was a very interesting one that we found in our research with Fortune magazine. where they said a lot of people, when you think about it and you hear, oh, what's the future of work? Artificial intelligence, automation, or robotics. And a lot of people say, oh, my biggest worry is that my employees are thinking that I will be replaced. Sorry, that the employees are worried that they might be replaced by robots. And I like this quote. It says, I wish my company would make space for humanity and human error. I often feel like a robot, and as though the company sees me as someone that can be easily replaced. And so how are people beginning to think about that employment contracts, that relationship with the employee? Is it that they're thinking of them as just numbers, or people that they need to have more than a transactional relationship with, something that allows them to go the extra mile? We always say in our business that your employees are going to treat your customers the exact way you treat them. And if you've spent a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of resources acquiring those customers, you need to invest almost the same amount of resources in taking care of the employees that are going to take care of those customers, because that's why you're in business. And so you have to take into consideration a very significant amount of how the future of work is going to change for them, and be able to upskill and prepare them, and not just think of them as human capital in units that can be quickly replaced. So what do you do? I won't go through every detail here. There are three main things that we need to focus on as we think about how we want to prepare our employees for the future. One is, as an organization, you have to think very deeply about how you invest in people. How do you supercharge your development efforts to ensure that your workforce is prepared? What are the individual development plans that you have put in place for your workforce, recognizing where your business is going in the future? And how the second thing is around investment in innovation by all. We call it innovation by all because we believe every single employee has an opportunity to contribute new thoughts, new ideas, and have a voice in shaping the direction of the organization. I remember reading about some people that approached Amazon, and sorry, I'm using some of my examples are more from the United States. And you know, Amazon started as a business, as we all know, selling books, selling retail, but they all of a sudden saw a need based on the excess capacity that they had to be able to do cloud-based hosting services. And an innovation came from somebody in the engineering department that this is something we could do for other companies. Today, Amazon's AWS, Amazon Web Services, is probably the most profitable arm of Amazon today. That wasn't the core business. It came out of innovations from people within the organization that recognized what the future of work, the future trends in that company's industry, what it will look like, and a responsive management team took advantage of it, invested in it, and took it to the next level. And then how do you elevate the leader's human side? We often say that employees don't quit their jobs. They leave their managers. Managers are most important touch points in terms of the connection between your employees, your workforce today, and that future for your business and the future of the work contained in that business. So how do you elevate the side of leaders? We'll get into that a little more. One of the things that our research has found right now is that I saw a quote saying that the CEO is no longer just the chief executive officer, it's the chief empathetic officer. That this COVID has shown a side of many CEOs that many organizations didn't even see before, because a lot of CEOs have come out and the first thing that they have said is, it's our employees first. We got to take care of them, their financial well-being, their emotional well-being, their physical well-being, all the other elements, because if the workforce isn't well taken care of, they know that the customers are going to notice a slowdown in productivity. And companies that have not responded to this, even some of the most profitable companies, and that they've had to deal with the PR nightmare of having so much demand, but when they didn't take care of their employees or prepare them for that future, they ended up with a public relations nightmare. And so these are some interesting quotes from a recent Microsoft study. And I think some of my colleagues have alluded to this as well. This one, the first quote is that the pandemic will have a lasting impact of work. No doubt 9 to 5, the work day may fade away. Physical offices will not disappear. One of the most consistent themes that people have seen is this acceleration of the blending of work-life, which could often soften the dynamics of the workplace. Over half of the parents surveyed are people who have children that were surveyed. 54 of them said it's become more difficult balancing household demands while also being at home. And interestingly, a lot of this is actually felt by millennials and some people from Gen Z who typically have younger children. So they have 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds who can't be taken care, and all of a sudden they now have to balance this responsibility. This wasn't something that people used to think about when you think about millennials, but a lot of them are now beginning to have young families. And so the issue of balancing childcare with remote work, while it may be temporary, it may actually change the way we feel about our co-workers longer term. We're going to be more empathetic to them, because you see, sometimes you may be watching a show on TV or talking to an executive and their young child walks into the picture and you into the image, and you spend 2-3 minutes to learn more about them. This has been some of the unintended positive consequences of some of the work from home issues that we're finding. So 62% of the people surveyed said that they feel more empathetic towards their colleagues now that they actually have a better view of the life that they have at home. Because a lot of us used to separate the issue of workplace, what happens in work versus what happens at home. But now, as Sam said, that home is now become your work, your church, your where you do your shopping, where you host all the different activities that you used to host at different places. All of a sudden, your colleagues now have a view of your life at home as well. And interestingly, this is now creating a more empathetic relationship between colleagues and between managers. According to this survey from Microsoft, 82% of the managers surveyed expect to have more flexible work from home policies post-pandemic. So we used to hear this a lot from our clients, particularly in Nigeria, one of the biggest financial institutions. They were not ready for working remotely. And all of a sudden, they're like, there's no way we could let our workforce work from home. But when everybody was forced, everybody had to quickly find a way to put the technology, the infrastructure, and the systems to be able to help managers better collaborate with their teams who are distributed remotely. So 71% of employees and managers also reported a desire to continue working from home at least part-time. So we've heard all of this kinds of feedback from focus groups that we've talked to, and all of a sudden, various organizations are now beginning to rethink that relationship. As Sam said, from that Gartner study, 32% of organizations are now thinking of moving from full-time to contingency workers. Again, I like this quote in particular, and again, we've not put the names of the contributors. It came from the Microsoft research. He said, if your boss couldn't see what you were doing in the old days, that meant you weren't working. As long as you get things done, it shouldn't really matter where you are. So all of a sudden, there's this very big focus on productivity and output, not just the amount of face time of somebody seeing you in a cubicle. But right now, there's now going to be so much focus on the output of what you are delivering. The whole issue of performance management has to be thought about differently, because all of a sudden, it's now going to be measured based on the work you are doing remotely. And then there are all kinds of issues and concerns that people have. There are distractions from their aforementioned family intrusions, connection issues, lack of ergonomic work environment. Again, for example, I'm working from home. I'm doing this webinar from home, from my home office. But within my own proper office, I have multiple computers. I have a waiting room. I have a conference room. But then the physical office space at home doesn't afford all the kind of ergonomy, the connectivity, the bonding that I will usually have with my team. And so initially, when this whole COVID thing started, there was a lot of, we can make this about, an almost permanent solution. But then there's also the interactivity with your work colleagues as well, which is a very, very big part of innovation. A lot of team bonding also results from that. And so this is an interesting piece of research I also want to share around what's on the mind, the top issues on the minds of employees by a gentleman named Josh Bersin. So you can take a quick look at these are the biggest issues at the beginning of the pandemic on the minds of employees: job security, a lot of it tied to financial well-being, personal health, childcare, and even productivity of the employees seems to be a big issue on the minds of the employees themselves. And so some of the things that have come out of this, they said COVID-19 may be the biggest thing that ever happened to employee engagement. And also in terms of transformation, I remember seeing a cartoon, some of you may have seen it going around, which said who was the biggest driver of the digital transformation in your organization. There was, 5% said it was the CEO, 10% said that it was the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, and 85% said it was COVID. It's interesting how things that were sitting on the sideline, all of a sudden, lots of companies have had to transform. And the big irony is that from this study from Josh Bersin, 90% of companies actually believe that their culture had improved because there are now a bigger focus on the outcome, about the output, about performance. 83% believe the employee experience is now better, and 84% believe that employee engagement has actually gone up just because of the connectivity that a lot of people feel during this time. And this is an interesting quote. He said, it took a global crisis for business and human resource leaders to wake up to the fact that when people don't feel safe, supported, or emotionally secure, they simply cannot do their jobs. If you don't take anything away from what I've shared today, it's that quote, and I'll repeat it again. It took this global crisis for business and HR leaders to wake up to the fact that when people don't feel safe, supported, or emotionally secure, they simply cannot do their jobs. And so this is why people have to begin to think about investing in the employee experience. How do you make sure that the workforce of the future is one that takes into consideration the totality of the well-being of the employee? And these are some results that we've shared in the past where the companies that invest in employee experience outperform those that don't. It's followed by this slide. This is more in the United States, but we've actually now begun to do a global study where companies that actually made a great place to work list, where there's demonstrated feedback from the employees that the companies have gone over and beyond, they actually outperformed the broader market three times to one. So, you know, if an organization where the employees are engaged would also outperform the market. So this is a little bit about the model of what we do. I won't spend too much time on that, and this is our contact information, and I'll just thank you. I know there'll be questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kunle, for sharing with us those great insights around how organizations are responding to the changes within the workplace. I have to also say thank you for offering to run a free COVID-19 employee survey for the Kenyan market for the next 2 weeks for free, courtesy of the Ncba Workplace Banking. We believe that it is only through continuous feedback from employees and employers around the emerging challenges, strategies, and solutions that we will all be able to leverage the opportunities that lie ahead. It is time to rethink work, workforces, and workplaces. So thank you very much, Kunle, for that very well articulated, insightful presentation. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting into the panel discussion for this morning, and one I am privileged to say carries a plenitude of human resource expertise. This session will be moderated by Mr. Jared Omondi, whom I had introduced earlier. He is General Manager, Retail Sales, and our Head of Workplace Banking. I will now hand over to him to introduce the panelists and kick off the discussion. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you very much, Emily. And thanks, Kunle, for the very incisive and a global perspective of what is happening, courtesy of a pandemic, and the proposed solutions on the way forward. Indeed, without a doubt, we've had a paradigm shift. Our working environment has changed. We are working from home. We are working from our sitting rooms. We've converted our sitting rooms to be our offices. At home, we expected to be parents. We expected to be nannies, teachers, and still fulfill our obligations as husband and wife. Culture and productivity is blurred because of the restrictions on human interaction. Our psychological predisposition has changed. Many things are happening. A lot of our colleagues have lost jobs, and indeed, even us who are seated here or who are in the call are not sure about tomorrow. So, ladies and gentlemen, to help us unpack this topic, the future of work and employee engagement, we have a great panelist composed of 3 great HR practitioners, and I'll start by introducing Monica Kia. If you could just have the slide on, please. So Monica Kia is the Ncba Group Director, Human Resource. Monica has a wealth of experience, 25 years of experience in financial services. She holds a master's degree in business administration, in strategic management and resource planning and marketing from the University of Nairobi, and a bachelor's of education from University of Egerton in mathematics. Prior to work experience in Ncba, she worked for one of the leading banks, that is Citibank, as a group head of learning and development in sub-Saharan Africa. She is also a certified executive coach by Academy of Executive Coach. Indeed, Monica is passionate about building a strong employer of choice brand. Welcome, Monica, and you can say hi to the audience. Monica, kindly unmute.
I hope you can hear me now.
Thank you, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you very much, Jared, and good morning to all the participants this morning. I'm very delighted to be part of the panel this morning to share and engage about this very exciting topic about the future of work and employee engagement. Looking forward to a very engaging session with the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Our second panelist is Mr. Paul Kasimu. Mr. Paul Kasimu is the Chief HR Officer in Safaricom, indeed one of our largest companies, not only in Kenya, but in Africa and extending beyond the world. Mr. Paul Kasimu is an accredited executive coach. He has experience in public sector, financial sector, airline, and FMCGs, and now in telecommunication. Previously, he held roles in East African breweries, Kenya Airways, Barclays, Botswana, and the UK. He holds also a chairman's position, or held a chairman's position at the Institute of HR Management in Kenya. Paul holds a Bachelor's of Economics degree and a Master's in Management and Organization Development. Currently, he's also studying for his PhD at Strathmore School of Business. Paul is purposefully in inspiring the possibility in others. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Jared. Good morning, everybody. Humbled to be here and looking forward to an interactive session. Thank you.
Our third panelist is Diana Johnson. Diana Johnson heads HR East Africa in BAT. She has a dual nationality, Brazilian and British, and you'll see that she can speak 4 languages, different languages. It will be interesting. She's a member of ISOBL, International Society of Business Leaders, currently responsible for driving strategy in area of HR agenda for East Africa and based here in Nairobi. Previously, she held roles in HR operations in terms of developing leave strategies, business based in Brazil. She's experienced in both HR business partnering and centers for expertise, include talent development, organizational effectiveness, acquisition, reward and benefit, global mobility, and change management, among others. She also holds a master's degree in administration. Welcome, Diana.
Good morning,
Hi,
everyone.
Diana.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So good morning, everyone, and to the participants and also the other panelists. So happy to be here and looking forward to our session and the sharings and experience. So thank you so much for inviting me for today.
Thank you. And moving straight on, I will want to welcome Monica. And Monica, as you're coming in, I will want to know from you, what are some of the measures that you've implemented in your organization to ensure business continuity amidst COVID, both for your staff and also for our consumers? And by so doing, keeping both the staff and the consumers safe. Welcome, Monica. You may use this opportunity also just to give us some insights in terms of how you view the future of workplace and employee engagement.
Okay, thank you very much, Jared. And again, very glad to be here, to be part of the session this morning. I hope that all of you are keeping well and safe. I think the previous speakers, Mr. Sam Watene, who is a great partner in Ultima Africa, and Mr. Kunle, who is a very, has got a great wealth of experience in great places to work, have shared a lot of insights with us about this future of work and employee engagement. I'll just take about 2 to 3 minutes, maybe just to talk about the reality of the future of work that is here with us. You know, it's interesting that for the many number of years, maybe last 2 to 3 or 4 years ago, we were talking about the future of work like it's very, very far. You know, the issue of artificial intelligence the work. So I want to say that that truly today all of us can say without any doubt that that future is here with us. We have been forced to now accelerate how we integrate the human and the machine. So I'm reminded of the different generations that are working together now. We have the digital natives and the digital immigrants. I don't know how many of us are immigrants and how many of us are natives, but our millennials, who are forming about 80% of our workplace, are actually digital natives. They have been born in this digital era. And just to be very real with you, I have 3 teenage children. And my oldest daughter this week said, Mom, I have a friend who I met in Harvard during the Harvard law seminar, who lives in New Zealand, and I want to send an African outfit to them. So I said, how are you going to do that? She said, I found somebody who can do this clothing in Instagram, and my friend has sent the measurements all the way from New Zealand. I've placed the order, and the outfit will be here in 2 days. And it's amazing just how fearless and how willing they are to actually delve into technology. And within 2 days, the outfit was here, a beautiful Nigerian outfit for Kunle, who is right now in Nigeria. You'll be proud that the design was selected. And in about a day or two, the outfit was in New Zealand. And that's the future of work that is here. If these are the people that we are going to employ and engage, if you're a digital immigrant who is having to adapt to technology, I think you have no choice but to actually accelerate. We've talked about flexibility, agility, and resilience. And that in the future of work that is here with us as employers and how we are going to engage with our employees, we've got to be flexible and very agile. I think it was Sam and Kunle who said leadership has to rise to the occasion. Those who are very resistant to remote working now really don't have much of a choice. I think I used to have these conversations when I moved from my previous employer in Citi, which was a company that had over 100 countries present, where we had no choice but to interact in different global spaces at different time zones. And so technology has to then integrate with the humans and to deliver the service to our customers. We have to remodel our businesses. And I think Tyras did talk about, and Jared, who is in charge of workplace banking, of how we've had to remodel and adapt and bring the service to you in a convenient place. People want to be able to enjoy and consume services in a very, very convenient, right in the places of their home. And we have Uber Eats. We have people saying, bring the food to me, bring the digital services of your bank to me. I don't want to come to your banking hall. We have people now ordering their matatus through Civil service online and at the convenience of what, their time. So we have to adapt and redesign our models. We've talked about empathy, where we have to now recognize that our employees are dealing with multiple issues, very worried about their health. So the new normal, which we are talking about now, has got to have leaders that are empathetic. If you are the leader who was Umbwa that we talked about, I think it was Kunle or Sam, where you want to see people clocking in, clocking out, work is no longer a place anymore. We have people who can, deliver their services and be engaged from anywhere. And so we have to then think about the employees very, very differently. Employees, from the research that Kunle has shared from Great Places to Work, will choose to work for you depending on the care the empathy, and just thinking about their mind, their body, and their souls. So Jared, I think this is my perspective about the future of work that is here. And I was particularly, keen when Sam talked about that people, employees today, want to see that an employer gives them meaningful work. So a culture that has purpose is where employees want to engage and to work for you.
Thank you very much, Monica, for those insights. Now, I would wish to call upon Paul, but as we are calling upon Paul, I note the key highlights that you've given us, Monica: collaboration, flexibility, agility, resilience, and remodeling our business strategy, empathy amongst our managers or leaders, and indeed, we have to retool ourselves. Paul, as you come along, I would want you to unpack for us, as you give us your high-level thoughts, how has productivity in your place or in your workplace been impacted by COVID?
So thank you, Jared, and thank you to previous speakers. Really enlightening and great to hear what's happening across the piece. I'll try to see if I can bring it home in a practical way in terms of not what we should, but what we have. And perhaps just not that you should pick and drop, but just again challenging us in terms of the journey. Now, if we go to the next slide, I think it's Emily. The truth is, we are talking of COVID, we are talking of workplace, but actually this is not a new phenomenon. Even before COVID, last year I had this slide presenting to my Digital Academy participants, and we talked of, let's just look back, evolution of work. So 18th century, we had a steam engine where work was physical labor, basic engineering. Then in the start of last century, we had the electricity mass production. You remember Taylor and division of labor, specialization. And that time it was, how do you standardize and how do you bring certainty? Some of us may have smelled or even felt the introduction of computers, automation. And then it was deep expertise, disciplinary, then the sciences, technology, engineering, and maths. And at the beginning of this century, I think we are now looking at the cyber physical systems, Internet of Things, which is now the fourth industrial revolution. So actually, what COVID has done is just helped us accelerate the fourth industrial revolution, and then learning agility, adaptability, empathy, transdisciplinary. My take out of that slide is WWW. Work, workforce, workplace has evolved and will continue evolving. So when I hear a new normal, a new reality, I say the new reality is just an evolving reality. It's never fixed reality. My next slide for provocation is what also we've had before in terms of workforce, demographics, and habits. We have 5 generations in the workplace. So we have some silent generation, baby boomers, X generation, millennials, and now the digital natives themselves. But actually there's another 6th generation, which is called the perennials. And they bloom irrespective, and they're ageless. So they repackage and they move forward. That for me is a future kind of, that's a survival generation that we will see. Average years of work, and then contingent workers where you don't have full-time employees is something that was also there due to the fourth industrial revolution. And more than 70% organization offering flexible working. Now we are talking of almost 100%. Next slide, again, is provocation, and then I can see whether I will answer the question. Is perhaps just looking at specifically what we've had to do based on COVID and wearing the lens of the future of work, digital Safaricom. And we have a digital steerco that has been looking at how do we digitize the workplace. But in here, post-COVID, we looked at 5 things. We looked at the phased return. How will you ensure people return? We didn't have a real lockdown in Kenya, but there is a case of how do you ensure that people are in a phased bit? And I will share with you some specifics. The health control protocol, ensuring low-risk health for return and post-return premises. I think that's a big one even now as we talk. Property measures about how do you identify and accommodate social distancing. Yes, work is a space, not a place. But again, there is a reality that not everybody will be working from home. Now, when those of us with retail outlets, is how do you ensure the touch points, the customer touch points are also looked at specifically? And then how do you support the process and practice? I'll share with you 2 quick slides on some detail of what we've done on especially the protocols. So if you go to the next one, I'm speaking of how we've had to look at the key measures for the area. So we've kind of qualified red zones, yellow zones, green zones. And in there, we've also looked at what are the access measures, and should you ensure that approval is done, and some of it we are saying is mandatory, some is required. But it's again looking at your workplace and asking, how do you ensure you don't expose your people? My next slide shows you the specific kind of PPE protocols. This is purely, if nothing else, just to say, we've had to go deep and say, if it is a high-risk area, the protocols are deeper, medium risk, and then low risk. And it is important because if you have a data center, for instance, that supports the whole of Kenya and the whole of M-Pesa, and you have employees there, how do you ensure that you don't compromise the entire business? Now, I have 2 more slides, and then I will see whether I've answered your question, Jared. So the next one speaks of what we've had to focus on. And this is kind of my now answering what I think it means for us. 3 things. Safety and well-being will be the first thing that we've focused on. We have also focused on engagement and then performance. Now, when you look at safety and well-being, the first thing we did was remote working. We have about 80% of our people working from home. We've also looked at the teams that must go to the office. We've had green and blue teams. So you separate them so that the risk of infection across the teams is reduced. And I spoke to the PPEs, and we provide all our employees and their families protective equipment, including masks. Now, we have a bit of the support through how people thrive and find balance. And I think it was mentioned by my colleague that we talk about mind, body, heart, and soul. So we're looking at 24/7 counseling. We have actually had to look at how we can also provide free meeting days and time. So we even measure who is working at lunch hour, who is working after 5. And we kind of are a shame kind of a league of the teams that have not adhered to that. And then non-work issues is also a big one. So bits like domestic violence, burnout, finances, loss. How do you support your people during that time? And I think it was one of the speakers earlier on about Kanban purpose. Reach out to the entire ecosystem. And we looked at even the cleaners who are not necessarily our employees, and we had to give them packs and stuff to say, keep safe, and also let's see whether we can keep you going. On engagement, I think that's a big one. And how do you maintain a connected organization? Initially, we had fortnightly surveys, and we're asking people, how are you feeling today? And then asking, what could we do differently? Collaboration is a big one. How do you ensure the team remains in a cohesive manner? So the agile teams, one-on-one sessions. And then one of the things we've had to note is avoid overload, because sometimes there are too many meetings back to back, including on private space, and people are saying, hey, give me my time. And then this one again was mentioned. You called it Chief Empathy Officer. I'm saying identify Chief Energy Officers in your teams. There are people who are literally keeping our teams going. We have 6,000 employees, and our engagement currently is at about 94%, which again is a big one when people are working remotely. And then uphold organizational citizen behaviors. Allow people to go the extra mile. And yes, they smile if you smile to them and you also engage them. And now answering specifically your question on how you redesign, how you ensure performance, I think revisit the jobs and how they are structured. Look at the measure outcome, not activity. I think that's the biggest shift that I would say. It is not whether somebody has logged in and stayed there. It is what are they delivering. Reskill and redeploy, that's a fact. And the faster you do that, the better. And then how do you enable your people to be productive? So laptops, connectivity, Zoom, Teams is what we've had to do. And then ensure that you have the workforce analytics that help you see how you're doing. My last slide. my key parting shot, I think for me, it's if you want productivity, empower employees with the right technology, the processes, the culture and physical spaces to create an environment where the innovation can flourish, because you have to look for new ways of doing things. Promote that collaboration and flex working, of course, diversity, inclusion, and then integrate the work-life piece where you don't just say deliver without asking, how have you been? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. We take note of that. Measure outcomes and not activity. Those are great insights and nuggets, Paul. I want to bring move forward to Diana. And as Diana, you are coming on board, the question that you need to unpack for us, being in a manufacturing sector, is what are some of the measures that you've taken to ensure that your manufacturing plant, your distribution channels remains resilient in the face of this pandemic? And how has it worked or panned out as you also ensure employee safety or matters to do with health?
Okay, so I'll stick to that one through the presentation. So just for us to start quickly, so I think we talked a lot already about what that new normal means. And I agree totally with Paul. I think it's not only about the new normal, but it's just, the way things are evolving. And I think between us, HR practitioners or even head of HRs, I think everyone has that question in mind on what will be the future of work, and what are the things that we need to put in place and the future demands, and making sure we are also worried about the new capabilities and involving our business sustainability. So as we move forward, the next slide, is just a bit of sharing, right, on what happened. So I think everyone started the year with all our HR agenda and plans, and I'm pretty sure everyone had a big bucket on future of work, because we are always thinking about new things, implementing new practices and policies. But suddenly, the balance kind of changed for something more immediately, because we had to do changes in the workplace and ways of working quite quickly. So business continuity plans and this future of work discussion just came kind of the balance for the short term as we started 2020. And I think that's why we are here in the session today, and talking a lot about how do we help our teams and our leadership with change management to be resilient, and also to do everything we need to do in an agile, bold, and creative way to make sure we go through this pandemic smoothly. And moving forward to my other slides, a bit on my ideas on what is discussed, and I think the other panelists touched base in all of that. So the future of work in terms of how digital we are becoming, us and our teams. How do we more effectively communicate? Because I think that is one of the big pillars of what's happening today. A lot on wellness and well-being. So I think most of the big companies already had a fantastic agenda on that, but we are seeing today the even more need to talk openly about it and the issues we are facing. And then, of course, talking about leadership, right? And it's not only about competencies, it's beyond competencies, and how we talk about an holistic leadership and how our leaders are facing this period. And I think this is the best, so for me, that's my opinion, this is the best moment to test true leaderships across the business. And of course, the last one, which is last but not least, it's all about flexibility, right? And how do we implement flexibility in everything we do in the workplace? And moving to some of the actions, and now I'll try to answer the question on each one of the topics. So if we can just move the animation. on the slide. So becoming digital. So I think in less than 24 hours or even a little bit more than that, we had to make sure our workforce was able to work remotely, had the sufficient and the tools to make it happen. And I think we comment that in the beginning of the session, how quickly we became tech savvies on Zoom, on Teams, and all these collaborative tools. When we talked about comms, I think this one is really important for me. So how do we make sure our comms channels are objective? In this case, for me, less is more in terms of how overwhelmed we are with the communications and channels. And how do we make sure we have consistent and transparent communication to our employees? When we talk about wellness and well-being, and already jumping to answer the question, so I think I talked about a lot the human capital management versus the human experience management, because I think that's what we are as HR at this stage, and more than ever needed, right? So in BAT, to ensure that we maintain our production and everything. So what we did, so first thing, I think everyone will think about basics as PPEs or tools. I think sure. So we guarantee that we gave PPEs and sanitizers and everything for the teams that works in the trade, in the factory, and even working remotely. But I think the first one is communication. So how do you make sure your teams are aware of the do's and don'ts, how to quickly give them information about government directives, what needs to be done, and how we are adapting as BAT to make sure we are compliant to everything. And also, I think a lot of things that was mentioned in the session, but we provided counseling services, check-ins in our clinic, or even our medical providers. There's a lot in internal comms in terms of tips on well-being. So even today, we had a session on the how to be physically fitness, and how we are incentivizing each other to make sure we have breaks and moments to get fit at home. So all those things together to make sure that we are aware of the importance of wellness and well-being. So answering the question. And then on the two last ones, is still about the active and passive mindset of our leaders in the business, and how we make sure that we don't stop our talent agenda. So how do we keep developing our employees even virtually? So in BAT, even us, we are changing a lot of the trainings and approaches to virtual platforms, which we are kind of breaking some paradigms and mindsets because they are working pretty well and we're having such great feedbacks. And I think in terms of flexibility, this one, I'm quite passionate about it, because possibly 1 year ago or something, to send people home to work remotely, we were going to, I don't know, design a policy or send a template or something like that. And now we just did it in 24 hours with no, policy written, kind of, let's just believe on our flexibility and trust. So that's why I for me, the thing of this slide is the power of trust and the power of our culture in our companies, and freedom from responsibility. So how do you make sure your employees, they understand the discipline needed to work remotely? And then going forward, so the next slide, so we can end. I think all this discussion for me is quite great in terms of the need for us to adapt all the time and shaping our initiatives along the way and learning from each other. So this is the main thing of the session today. And how can we still be more flexible? We can enhance our employee experience, and of course, the outcome will be more engagement. So for me, this is the shaping of the future of work internally and externally, especially for BAT. And just to finish, I really like this quote in terms of our current and unknown future is giving us HR a unique opportunity to rethink the way we work, being agile, resilient, and fluid to set a new trend to the world. So let's just enjoy the ride. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Diana. I note agility. I note it's no longer about human capital. It's more about a human experience. And indeed, our viewers who are online, we invite you to post questions to our panelists through our social media channels. whether it's Facebook, Twitter, and the likes. So then, as soon as we are done with the formal engagement, then we will be answering your questions. Now, let us keep it more practical. Truth be told, the impact that we've seen of tremendous proportion has been job losses in the market. That, and with the fact that we are staying at home or working at home, there are people who have realized that probably they were not meant to do what they are doing. And today they are engaged in, doing their side hustle or realizing their dream, while on the side also trying to deliver for their current employer. So my question to you, Monica, is how do we put together, or how will you in the future harness, certain benefits that will speak to the motivators of an employee today? Because the truth is, the employee before COVID and the employee today has changed completely. Our motivations have moved or shifted to other things. Now, the challenge to you is, how do you put together a CVP or a value proposition that will still help you attract and retain the best talent? To you, Monica.
Thank you, Jared. I hope that you can hear me. I must say that, when we were talking about empathy, it's real. I got kicked out of, the session as I was talking earlier. So Paul Kasimu, I think we'll take this offline because, I was depending on Safaricom to make sure that I complete my session. But I think I'm back online now. So sorry about that. And I think to your question, Jared, rightfully, as you say, is that, employee engagement and motivations, have changed. And today, the reality is that the disruption that has come with COVID-19 has presented, like many of the speakers have said, many challenges to the employees. So it's become very imperative for all the leaders in the workplace to then think, how are we going to motivate our employees and really keep it real? So a very, very compelling employee value proposition has got to then start coming alive. So at Ncba, like I was talking to and alluding to earlier, we have an employee value proposition that speaks to the purpose as to the why. People need to know, why should I wake up every day and come to work? The places I'm coming to work to is different today. It may not be the office that you are used to driving to work, but you've got to get out of bed, dress up and show up for your customer, dress up and show up for the people that matter. So I think leaders have got to show up where it matters most. We've got to connect with our employees and really connect with their hearts and minds and soul. And I think Diana has mentioned the issue of trust. We've got to be honest with our people and tell them as it is, with a lot of empathy. So if an employee is struggling, to connect from home, maybe because they don't have enough data bundles, and yet you expect them to call customers and be able to still remain productive, what are you doing as an employer to be able then to address those issues? So at Ncba, when this pandemic happened, we had to really show care to our employees. So our employee value proposition talks about caring for your employee. And we did provide additional data bundles to make sure that people can connect from home, because 50% of our workforce today is working remotely, so that we can create the social distancing that is required for people to feel safe. And therefore, it was important that we show care. We also realized initially that, even commuting for those who needed to commute, because banking is an essential service, the first priority for us is the health and safety of these employees. How are they going to get to their places of work for those who needed to travel? And so therefore, we had to take a call as leadership that will be empathetic and will care for these employees. And so we arranged for Uber services for all our employees to be able to get to work safely, those who needed to get to the areas of work. So we have to realize for this employee to remain engaged and to feel that they are able to connect, to the workplace, whether they are remotely working or working in the office. They are worried about their health. Am I going to be impacted by this COVID-19 virus? So a lot of information sharing through the crisis management committee that Paul Kasimu talked about, where we are sharing with employees of what they need to keep safe, over and above the PPEs that we gave everyone, the masks, sanitization, and cleaning the environments that we are working. We also arranged with our health service providers, Minet. I would like to acknowledge them today. They have been extremely supportive to our employees to make sure that the mind frame of our employees is in the right place, that their well-being, because we know this has a lot of emotional impact, is that people are able to understand how to take care of themselves. For those who get impacted, because we've had some staff who have been impacted, to ensure they can get tested and take care of all the medical bills. Anyone who's had to be hospitalized, because we've had situations like those, we've had to tell them, don't worry, we'll take care of your medical care. We call them, I personally call the staff who are unwell, and assure them that we will be there for them, so that in their minds and in their hearts, there's a very good quote by Maya Angelou that if you remember nothing else I say today, remember that people might forget what you say. We've said a lot today, so I don't know how much you will remember today. They might even forget what you did. But what's important and what will people remember is how you make them feel. So our customers, we've showed up for our customers whose businesses have been impacted. So our employees have had to call customers and say, if you cannot pay your loan, we'll give you a moratorium for a period of time until your business is able to stabilize. So all of these contribute to how employees feel and connect and engage, so that you can now be able to get the right outcomes and not so much the activities as we are talking about the future of work today. So I think in a nutshell, let's remember as employers that our employees will remember how we made them feel during this time. How well did we care for them? How well did we empathize with the situation of the unsettlement of this COVID-19 disruption? How well did our customers feel cared for? So we are a connected ecosystem, and so you cannot divorce the employee as just a human resource. We have to treat the employee as a human being for them to remain engaged and deliver the outcomes that we are expecting. Thank you, Jared. That's my perspective.
Thank you very much, Monica. That is very comprehensive. We have to be empathetic. So moving on to Paul, I would want to understand, you mentioned about your productivity being at 94%. You have a huge workforce of over 6,000 employees. How do you keep these people engaged throughout and ensure that you are still achieving business objectives?
Thank you again, Jared. I think what we've looked at is, first, we have a commitment to the customer. And therefore, one, we are an essential services company, and we had to remain on 24/7. In spite of what Monica may have experienced, I think I'll say that could be an issue of pay early to avoid disappointment. But you should be muted. So I think one of the things we've had to look at was, what is it? So I think we looked for three things, I would say. If you want to grow or to deliver, there is mindset, skill set, and tool set. And it's looking at what is the mindset of your team or your teams or the individuals that you have. What skill sets do you need to have where you can log in and ensure you have you're connected at the right time? What do you need to do to ensure that you have the tools to work, like Teams or Zoom? Zoom has been a challenge in some cases. How do you ensure that team is connected? So I think it was, again, first working on the person and the duty of care, where we said we will ensure that first we take care of your safety and that of your family. And we did something that nobody else, I think, that I know did. we had 100% testing of our people, about 100%. And what we did was we allowed people to test their families and the livings. And what that was we wanted to be in control of the process. We didn't want to have the government come and pick you through contact tracing. And we worked with our people in a very humane way. The next piece was enabling them in terms of connectivity. So we had to give them bundles. We had our call centers. We have had 4 call centers. 1,800 of our staff are working from home. We provided them with seats. In fact, we allowed them to take the seats they had in the office to take them home, or we purchased other seats for them, ergonometric, to ensure that they can, again, discharge their duties optimally. And then we went into the piece of saying, how do we ensure that they are the energy remains? So clarity and energy was one of the things we worked on. And then after that, it's more ensuring the 2 sets of around, there's something we use called 3x3x3. So we'll look at what are the 3 things you need to deliver in the next 3 days, next 3 weeks, next 3 months. Outcomes, not activities. And through that, then it has become very easy for us to progress as a company. We just did our cascade of our strategy yesterday, and it was online. And we had our Heroes recognition scheme. It was online, and we had about 600 of our people dialing it. So I think for us, it's ensuring safety and well-being, engagement, and then performance will come naturally. Our purpose is to transform lives, and that is what drives our sustainability.
Thank you very much, Paul. Those are very, very practical steps that you took. I like the one of providing seats or taking my seat back home. I think the HR practitioners who are on call today, you can take that home. It's a very practical solution. Very many people are struggling trying to buy, new furniture to be able to, be in a position to work. Very practical, Paul. Thanks for that. And also, the art of, testing all the employees. It's good to be on the know, so then you're on control. Okay, so Diana, I want you to give us, I know we've talked about a global perspective of how Kenya versus the rest of the world has reacted, over COVID. And probably from your perspective, I don't know whether you may think that we were early adopters, late adopters, or probably what are some of the things, especially to the HR practitioners, that we could improve on, drawing from, a global comparison?
Well, I think on that perspective, Jared, giving my personal opinion, right? I think the way you react is also really dependent on what is the stage of the country, right, on COVID cases. So even when we talked about, we were all with fingers crossed that, Africa was going to skip COVID, because even we all remember that not a long time ago, the number of cases in our countries were quite low. And then because of that scenario, I think this is the way companies and the people react to the pandemic. So I don't think Kenya is far away from the global trends or the way we react. To be honest, as coming from another country, which, by the way, Brazil is not a good comparison because it's dealing really badly with the situation. So, and speaking to other BAT colleagues all around the world, even coming from Asia, we know that the situation was bad in places in Europe like Italy and Spain. I don't think we were in the bad situation. So I think we reacted directly with the information we got from the government and the number of cases we had. So I'm really proud even to see, in this session, so Paul giving examples of things that Safaricom is doing or other companies in Kenya are doing, that, to be honest, I don't see other companies around the world doing the same in terms of quickly adopting measures or initiatives, taking care of employees. So a lot of companies out there taking a lot of time to react, especially on this well-being and wellness case. And talking Kenya as a whole, probably, of course, it's and we depend a lot on the country's infrastructure in terms of connectivity, internet, which is not that easy to access or open. So I think that maybe is one of the parts which doesn't help us with the remote working, because we are not on the top edge in terms of connectivity. But answering your question directly, I don't think Kenya is far away from the global trend. And even I'm quite happy to see a lot of initiatives done by big companies that are different from companies out there. So I think we are in a good space. And of course, there's realities of the country and the situation which doesn't help what's going on. But coming from out there, I really think that there's a lot of things that the other continents or countries can learn from Kenya and Africa.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, we want to be a little bit deep on this. We want to speak a little bit about stigmatization. Fact is that COVID has affected everyone. If you've not been infected, thank God. Now, Monica, this is to you. How do we manage and transition, staff members in our workplaces who, for obvious reasons, have been affected or been infected by COVID, and by so doing, avoid the stigmatization I think that still exists within the society?
Thank you, Jared. So that's a real good question because, as we said, the health and safety of the employee comes first. People need to feel comfortable that when they deliver their services, they are safe and, and that the employer is caring for them. So at Ncba, we have had incidences where some of our staff have been impacted. And, we've allowed those staff, obviously, as I said earlier, we've provided the health care that is needed for them and their families. We did not do 100% testing of all staff, but we've made it available to staff, whenever incidences like those happen, and we've taken full 100% care of their medical, medical care if they need to be hospitalized. We have done a lot of communication. And the communication that we have sent out regularly is to be very open with staff that COVID-19 is not a death sentence. If people have the information required on how do they self-care, there's a lot of information from the Ministry of Health on how people can self-care, how to keep healthy, boost your immunity, and make sure that you're eating the right things, keep healthy exercise, and especially from the mental well-being. So what we've done is to remove the stigma, is to really educate our employees that anybody can be impacted. There is nobody who is immune to COVID-19. It doesn't choose status. It doesn't choose where you live. It doesn't choose which country you're from. As Diana has said, other countries across the world have had even bigger impact than we have. So the realization that anybody is vulnerable to COVID-19 then makes it clear that the stigma that anybody who is impacted has should not really make them feel, that they shouldn't come back to the office. So what we've done is allowed those who have been impacted to share their stories. And we are calling them heroes, the Ncba Heroes, because our purpose and our mantra is to inspire greatness and to allow our employees to do greatness every day. So we've had a few very brave employees who've actually come up and shared their story and said, this is what happened to me. I was going about my day-to-day activities, doing everything possible, making sure I'm wearing my mask, sanitizing my hands, keeping the social distance. But, I developed a flu, looked very normal. And because of the education that we've given our staff in terms of, you must watch your body. How do you feel? This is the contact number to call should you need any support from our medical service providers. They had easy access to information and to people who could help them quickly make the right decisions of getting early health care. And they've come back and they are openly sharing their experiences with the staff. And so the issue of stigma is, not there anymore. And people are actually realizing the more we share our experiences for those who have been impacted, the better it is for all of us. We know what to do, what not to do. And when they are ready to come back to the office, psychologically, physically, emotionally, then they are welcome back. And that stigma is then removed. And if you prefer to continue working remotely, because you're well, but you just feel psychologically not ready, we still allow you to work remotely. So I think creating an opportunity for them to come out as heroes, share their stories, remove the stigma has been a great positive impact to the rest of the employees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Very practical indeed. We need to celebrate those of us who have, emerged victorious over COVID. Now, Paul, I want us to delve a little bit more on the issue of, leadership. One of the panelists said that leadership is in crisis. What kind of, a leader do we need today and tomorrow for the future? What kind of tools, skill sets will they need?
Thank you, Jared. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces we talk of. Remember, again, mindset, skill set, tool set. I think that, for me, is a mantra for future fit of not just the individual, but also the leader, depending on irrespective of your position in the organization. And before COVID, last year, actually, we looked at some of the leadership shifts that were required in the fourth industrial revolution period. And in there, we found the biggest of those was the shift from directing kind of pace-setting leader to more coaching, empowering. And we started, in fact, one of the things we did was we have about 100 line managers accredited as coaches. And if you asked me, I would change the title of line managers to be not sometimes emotions officers, but also chief coaches. Because if you don't get line managers who can coach, I think that for me, the mindset of the role of the leader is not to direct, is to enable. And I think that mindset was a big one for us. We also looked at the skill sets that we needed to equip our line managers with. And one of the things we've done, and we were fortunate, again, last year we had come up with what we call Safaricom Business School. And in there, we have about 10,000 programs that we've partnered with suppliers, Microsoft, IBM, LinkedIn, across the piece. In fact, as a matter of fact, we've had about 300,000 videos viewed since March to date. 13,000 courses average there. And one of those is a specific program for leadership. And we started with some of the modules there, like leader as a coach, 6 morning habits of high performers, how to develop emotional intelligence, and most importantly, the power of storytelling. And guess what? We got the chief storyteller of Microsoft. He's resident in Seattle to speak to my line managers on how do you tell stories, inspiring stories. We've put our EXCO, right from Peter, newly, now 100 days here. We have assigned them coaches that will then take them through what kind of a leadership shift do you see yourself adopting in the pace post-COVID. And I think for me, that has become a huge, big one of how do you then bring out the best of your teams. So quite a mix of bits, and then ensuring that you have a future fit talent and future fit organization.
Okay, thank you very much. Diana, probably I would want us to delve a little bit on training in terms of how do we retool, upskill, our teams going forward. And, generally, I know Paul has mentioned about how they have done their trainings, mentoring and coaching. Probably from your view, how best can we do this?
Thank you, Jared. So I think on that one, and even from the experience I'm having during this period, and really positive experience on how we can even manage to do all these trainings and sessions remotely. So changing the few kind of face-to-face sessions we had to virtual platforms. And the good thing for me, and I think this is the tips for everyone, is that even if you look today on how we learn, right, how adults learn, and how today we are open to the informations we share and keep, is what we call the pills of information, right? So they're short videos or short articles. So even for you to get someone to attend, 2-3 day classes is not what we are seeing today. And those virtual platforms are enablers. So I think using Paul's example of the videos that Safaricom's employees are seeing, or even BAT, as we partner with what we call the Grid platform, which has all kinds of videos from gurus out there, and you can daily, if you are still commuting to work or you have a small break, you could put your earphones in and kind of listen to a 3-minute video of a leader guru out there to give you tips on motivation and culture. So each day you can listen to 2 or 3. So for me, the big thing is there's so many content out there. And even during this period, I think everyone is experiencing that great institutions, so Harvard and all of them, they are opening their sessions online with webinars, with virtual tools, which you can partner as a company and make sure you give your employees a lot of tools that they can access anytime, anywhere. So if you have a small break here and there, beginning of the day, end of the day, you can do that. So even recently in BAT, we sent a 1-hour block in everyone's calendar, which we're calling the Learning Fridays. So on Friday afternoon, we sent an invite, you accept it, so it blocks 1 hour of your agenda for you to create the discipline. On that 1 hour, you access content, you read, you listen, for you to learn. So for me, this is the main takeout in terms of, I think this is the best way to upskill our employees and leaders going forward, making sure the content is there and they can access it whenever they have time and they want to, or they're curious about any topic.
Thank you, Diana. Flexibility and also creating discipline, that is very important. Now I'm going to ask, I'm going to ask my final question to all the panelists, and this is about employee separation. This is a reality. It's inevitable that companies at some point, due to the, the impact of COVID or otherwise, have to right size. So the question is, how do you deal with this? From an HR perspective, how do you support these employees? What advice will you have to people who are, currently employed, those who dropped off, and also, to manage expectations? That fact is, at some point, there'll be a transition. The transformation happen. So probably I'll start off with Monica. You give us maybe an answer to that. And also you give us a closing remark. Thereafter, we will now take questions from the audience.
Okay, thank you, Jared. I think that's a really important question that is in the minds and the hearts of everybody at this time, rightfully alluded to by our earlier presenters from the research that the biggest question in the research in the minds of people is job security. So I think my response to that is that we should all remember that the landscape has changed. And, the future is looking, quite uncertain. But however, jobs will change and people have got to remain agile. Opportunities will be created. New opportunities will be created through this crisis. As we are seeing the evolution in the industry, the way services are going to be delivered will change. So in the event that your job changes or the skill set required is different, I think those who will be able to adapt quickly and remain relevant to the workspace and be able to offer themselves to be reskilled, I think should remain optimistic, because what the employers are looking for are agile skills, people who are ready to be reskilled and do things differently. So at this point in time, when people are wondering, what's going to happen to my job, I would request everybody to rethink of, how relevant am I in the workspace? How agile am I? How quickly am I able to adapt? Because opportunities are there, and be ready to then take up new opportunities as the work evolves. For those that will unfortunately maybe lose their jobs, and we've seen a lot of that happening in the market, I think I would say remain optimistic, because as long as you have something that you can offer, you have a skill that you can offer, employers will still be looking for talent. There is going to be life even after COVID. I think we are debating whether it is post-COVID or it is living with COVID. We'll do things differently. But I think I would advise, and my parting shot on this is that let's have a bonded optimism. We'll need to show courage, a lot of courage, and remain calm, very deliberately so. So leaders who will show calmness in a very deliberate way during this crisis, and remain optimistic in a very bonded way, knowing very well that what I say today may change tomorrow, but I should be ready then to adapt and offer support to those who may lose their jobs today, to tell them that if you lose your job today, your skill might be needed elsewhere. And therefore, let's remain positive. I believe every challenge presents opportunities.
Thank you very much. Optimism, adaptability, and bonded optimism is key. Thank you very much, Monica, for those remarks. Now to you, Diana. We seem to be having a challenge, so I'll call upon Paul just to give your thoughts around the issue of redundancy, and also, in a way, you are closing remarks.
So one philosophy I bring to life every morning is we shall all leave the organizations we are in. It's a matter of when and how, not whether or not. It's when. And I think the next piece, and I will answer your question, is if you look at the very beginning, the fourth industrial revolution, with the catalyst of COVID, has meant workforce and workplace has changed. Now, what I think people should be asking themselves is, are you future fit? And how do you ensure you have the right mindset, skill set, and tool set for the journey ahead? So that mindset, skill set, tool set is something that I'll ask each one of us to reflect and say, are you future ready? In terms of redundancies, I think most organizations are hit differently. We are fortunate in the telecoms industry, we are less impacted than if you look at the service industry like hotels or airlines. And therefore, what I think will be important is your approach to learning. Your learning agility will be the tool to the next, will give you the ticket to the next game. And in there is, and this is my parting shot, future ready will mean you have employment security, not job security. And you can self-employ yourself or you can be employed by somebody, but employment security, not job security, is what people should be worried about. And the only way to do that, after you address your mindset, skill set, tool set, is to ask yourself, what is the approach to learning? And the learning philosophy that we are taking at Safaricom is, it has to be atomic. So small bits, because what you learned yesterday may not be relevant tomorrow. So in small bits is one. Secondly, it has to be continuous. So you keep on, like today, this webinar, I've learned so much from the other panelists and also the speakers before we started the panel session. And the final piece is it has to be collaborative. So atomic, continuous, collaborative. Future fit, are you ready? Thank you.
Well said. Employment security, not job security. I think that is very, very important, and continuous learning. Diana, if you are there.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you for coming back. So could you maybe just give us your thoughts around this and also your closing remarks?
Yeah, so for me, I think just to be direct, the point, I cannot resonate more what Monica and Paul have said. So, and for me, it's all about the learning aspect and about curiosity. So how curious you are in terms of what is there, or what, doing some reflections about what is the future of your role, and how you can always be on top of the new things that are coming, and being curious and using your time to learn and to read and to be out there, and to also refresh your networks, because even networking is important, not only kind of every day, but especially now. So how do you maintain your network active? So if you need them, they are there and they remember you. So this is for me, on top of everything that was said, one of the other tips. So please make sure your networking is active, and people you can reach to people, ex employers or ex.
Okay.
I think we've lost her.
So, yeah, I think we've lost Diana. But Diana, as you reconnect back, our point to note is curiosity and continuous learning. Networking is also very, very, very important. So by way of summary, we note that all our
and employment security, so not job security, for sure.
Okay, Diana, if you can hear us.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I can hear. I was not out.
Okay.
I was hearing throughout.
Okay, thank you very much. To our panelists, now we move to the next phase of this discussion. We should be more insightful, and we will be taking questions from our online attendees. And for this, I would want to welcome our Director Consumer Banking, Gladys Akinyi, to take us through.
Thank you, Jared, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much to our panelists for this very insightful discussion that we've had this morning. There are a lot of questions coming through our social media platforms, and this will just be a continuation of what the panelists have discussed, but also will enable the panelists to provide more insights from what our participants would really like us to, deep dive into. And my first question would be going to Kunle. So the question is from Shukane Induli, and they want to know, this is an excellent presentation, these are their comments, and insights to this new normal, plus how we have adapted fast. My request is you please share examples of good collaborative work tools other than the online ones, i.e. Zoom, Teams, etc. So which are, just if Kunle, you could share just other good collaborative tools that can be used.
Well, I'll put a disclaimer. I don't have any commission from any of the companies I'm going to mention. So the one that I like best is by Microsoft Teams. That's a very good collaborative tool. Another very good one is Slack. I don't know if you've seen Those are the two that I have used. Our London office started using a tool, a web-based tool called Monday.com for project management and collaboration. Another one is Asana. So those are about 4 tools that have varying levels of collaboration. Microsoft and Slack are good because they are very platform agnostic. Irrespective of your function, you can collaborate using those tools. But I think when you start getting into very specific departments or functions, then there are some tools that are more geared to the function. For example, my marketing team, they're scattered primarily in London, but they have different people in different locations. They use a tool, marketing automation tool called HubSpot. It's the most fantastic tool that I've seen for integrating content management, digital marketing, but it's very specific to the marketing function. So those would be my recommendations.
Great, thank you so much, Kunle. Paul, this is a question to you, and it's from Catherine Mwaniki. She says, great presentation, Mr. Kasimu. What is Safaricom doing to ensure home internet is accessible and affordable to more families during this COVID period? What about making home internet affordable during this time? So
great question, and thank you for your kind remarks. I think what we've also done is, especially for education sector, we've partnered with learning institutions and provided hugely discounted rates for universities and schools. And I think that was a much welcome one for teachers, for students, and therefore learning has been facilitated. We are also now going through having fiber to the home and to the business as one of the key priorities that we have. And that will also raise or reduce the issues of inaccessibility. And earlier this week, my CEO said we want to be 4G across the entire country. And what that does is it fastens the speed of connection, and it makes it easier for you to interact in a very short and also very efficient manner. So I think that's what we are working on to ensure that we take everyone along with us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The next question is to Diana. It's from Angie Wamboi. Angie would like to know for you to elaborate more on the leadership beyond competencies. What strategies have they put in place to ensure the vertical and horizontal development with staff working away from the office and with social distancing? So essentially, what strategies have you put in place to ensure the vertical and horizontal department, noting that staff are currently working away from the office in view of the current pandemic?
Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. So thanks for the question. So I think that one is a kind of a topic I really like. And I was reading a lot recently about looking at leadership in a holistic view. So that's why I put it in my slide, beyond competencies, and how all this wellness and well-being is a lot of studies coming in saying that part of a good leadership is a holistic leader, right? So it's not about the competencies and abilities you have as a leader, but also your state of mood. So the way you are, so if you are well balancing your life at home, so now we spoke a lot about different roles. So myself, right, working at home, and then homeschooling and babysitting my baby at home. So I'm even here in the session, and then my baby kind of camera is here by my side, so I can look at my baby at the same time. So the way as a human being we are comfortable and we are happy and our well-being is balanced is also a big part of how you perform as a leader. So that's why I called it beyond competencies. So for me, the strategy that we are putting in place, and I think it resonates a lot what Paul and Monica also said, is how we ensure that well-being and wellness is being spoken to our employees, and they are aware of how important it is for you to take a break, for you to have a balanced life, because if you can agree or not, but it will affect the way your leadership is seen from your teams and your colleagues. So it affects you as a human being, and of course, it will affect you as a leader. So I think answering straight to the question is, what is put in place is all about wellness and well-being, and making sure that we have a way to monitor it and sending tips and constant communication for people to be aware of how important it is. So it's much beyond competencies.
Great, and thank you for that answer. The next question is from Joseph Mithamu, and I'd like to direct this question to Tyrus. Joseph would like to know how effective this new normal impact on agricultural enterprises, and how well can these organizations adapt? Essentially, he'd like to know how the agricultural enterprises have adapted to this new normal. And I think as you answer that question, you could just generally talk to the participants around how we at NCBA have seen various, some of our customers adapt to this new normal. Over to you, Tyrus.
Thank you, Gladys. That's a great question. You know, when the government classified what were essential services, which ones were not, you know, agriculture, you know, was, and why? Because crisis or no crisis, whether people lose jobs or they don't, the essential product that agriculture produces is food, and everybody needs to eat. So that's the comforting part about agriculture and that industry and the sector. And in fact, when we look at our portfolio, those customers that are in the agricultural sector are among the fewer sectors that have probably seen the least impact in terms of their business turnover or cash flows. But obviously, it has also changed. You know, earlier on when I spoke and throughout this conversation, we've all heard about how people are interacting with businesses differently. We are buying differently from the places that we've been traditionally buying, even the essential services. If you're a business, the way you distribute your product may change. So markets were closed. It doesn't mean people stopped eating. So the flexibility or the nimbleness that someone in an agricultural enterprise needs to have is to think, so if the market is closed and people are still eating, how do I distribute my product still? And making those connections is a powerful way to do it. I've seen an increased number of people, you know, putting vegetables on the back of their pickup and parking by the side of the road. That might be one solution, yeah. Now, if you don't have many pickups and you come to a bank like us that finances pickups and you show us that you've got a business model and you've got a business plan and you're serving an essential need such as this one, you're probably going to have an easier conversation in terms of obtaining the support that you need to grow. So the key point here in terms of how do such enterprises adapt is observe the trend about how people have shifted and then tap into that, because an essential service is ultimately an essential service. What became not essential is many of the business models that we had that were reaching those markets. And that, I think, is the opportunity for many enterprises, both in agriculture or elsewhere.
Great, thank you so much, Tyrus, for that insightful answer. I'll go to the next question, which is from Joseph Nguru, and I'd like Paul to address this. So Joseph is asking, where is the future of companies that have been depending on field marketing for their continuity in the new normal, bearing in mind the level of literacy and majority of customers may not be able to fully embrace technology fully without being guided. So essentially, marketing, field marketing, how do they continue in the new normal, noting that customers, majority of the customers are not able to fully embrace technology fully without being guided?
In one word, I would say reimagine. They must reimagine their businesses. And it's not just agriculture, it is every person has to reimagine their business. And one of the big things they will have to ask them is engage with their walk in the shoes of their customers. Because if you walk in the shoes of your customers, then the answer lies there, because you can't just sit in an ivory tower and redesign what engagement looks like. But the truth is, it has to be a different way of doing it. So you have, again, to look at the tool sets that you require. We've seen a lot of people go now digital marketing. I used to talk of digital marketing. I've been looking for marketers, and before, brand marketers were very big. Then we went to customer marketing, the merchandisers, but more importantly, linking brand to sales. I think digital marketing was the next one. And if you can then explore that area further and conduct your customers in a more personalized way, the answer will be somewhere there. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Paul. The next question, I'd like to direct this to Monica, and it's from David Kanini. Excellent conversations, very enlightening. A question I have, how will talent management look like going forward? Monica?
All right, thank you, Gladys, and thank you to David Kanini for that question. A very interesting question and thought-provoking. And as I think about talent management in the future, I think it's going to be more like a marriage, you know. I have a choice to choose whom I want to marry. And so as an employer, I will be looking to see, you know, how do I want, what kind of talent am I looking for? And you as an employee also have a choice who you want to engage with, because as great companies to work for and best companies to work for, research has shown, is that employees now have choices. So talent management in the future will need to evolve, and as employers, we'll have to then rethink how we, you know, how are we going to remain attractive as employers? And you as an employee, how are you going to be relevant with your skill sets, your agility, adaptability, and learning ability to learn? So attracting the right skill sets, retaining the right skill set, and developing the right skill set will then be an integration and a collaborative conversation, because employees are looking for, why should I work for you? Why should I work for Safaricom? Why should I work for Ncba and BAT, who are on the panel today? So your employee value proposition has got to be very compelling. And therefore, the why and the purpose of your existence to attract the right talent will be very key. So like I alluded to, and I'll take the opportunity to say it again, at Ncba, our purpose is to inspire greatness for everyone. So we want our employees to do greatness every day, to get up with fire in their belly as to the reason why they have to, you know, work for Ncba. Because one, they feel there's a sense of purpose. So whatever you're doing and how you're delivering the service, you've got to feel excited about that. Secondly, you've got to provide an environment that's empowering. So talent management in the future, which is here and now, will be very different. You know, employees want to feel empowered. So leaders have got to really transition. And I want to acknowledge McKinsey today, who have partnered with Ncba to really upskill our leadership in this time of crisis. How do leaders, what will be expected of the leaders today? You cannot see your teams as you were used to before. And how are you going to manage that talent, people distributed in their homes? How are you going to ensure the outcomes are what is expected to deliver the service to the customer? So talent management in the new era is going to have to be one where leaders shift their mindset to really connect with the people, the heart and the minds of the employees. It's not so much about clocking the time and the register, but do you have the heart and mind of your employee? Have you given them the empowerment? So we have an Ncba Academy which is digital, allows you to learn anytime, anywhere, using any device. Short courses with video that capture the minds of these millennials whose attention span is actually very short. If you're going to talk to them for hours, they will switch off. So get your point quickly and capture the attention of that person in a very powerful way. So talent management is going to have to change in how we deliver our learning solutions. And so allow people the flexibility to learn in the comfort and convenience of where they are. So if you're going to have to wait for this one big seminar to happen once a year, then I'm sorry, that is the talent management of the past. So I'm very excited to see some of the initiatives, including the Institute of HRM that has now evolved. They are able to give the talent ability to learn using digital solutions. Again, the wellness is going to be very key in talent management. The talent management of the past, where you did not really care about the financial wellness, the emotional wellness, and the physical wellness of the employee is gone. People want to know that you care for them. How well do you assure them that you will give them a healthy and safety environment? Because if you don't, then I'm sorry, they will not work for you. So managing talent, you'll have to connect with people emotionally. Make sure that you really provide a proposition that promises that you take care of my well-being, you give me a safe space, now that there's COVID-19 and the workspaces that we are going to have, and provide a very agile and flexible working arrangements. So that's the talent management of the future. And I really want to say that at NCBA, we are thinking every day and getting feedback from our employees. What is it that they are looking for so that we can attract the right talent, we can be able to retain the right talent and keep everybody engaged. So thank you for that question, Gladys.
Monica, you wanted to add some more insights of talent management? Go ahead.
I think both of us want to add, Paul and myself. So I'll begin by referring to something that Paul mentioned, which was really about the fact that we are managing outputs a lot more closely. That means that we have a real finger on the pulse of how employees are performing on a continuous basis. So from a talent management perspective, we are then able, and I'll go back to your agriculture question and borrow an analogy from there, that we are able to use drip irrigation, give them what they require when they require it. And the content is available. As Diana said, there is so much content that we can give them what they require when they require. But also, let's reflect on some of the findings that have come through. Mm-hmm. We are now clearer of the critical skills that are required now, but it's also very clear that as we are molding organizations for the future, we are rethinking business models, we can now start thinking of future fit. Not only, Paul was talking about future fit organizations, but future fit organizations can only happen if we have future fit employees. So we need to start anticipating what kind of skills will be required in that new paradigm. Again, Kunle spoke about artificial intelligence. It's taking a bigger role. Right now, how are we seeing, how are we interacting with organizations from an artificial intelligence perspective? Have bots. So when I reach out to Safaricom, there is a bot that answers my questions. Why can't that be the kind of system that we have where HR is being run, the HR help desk is run using AI? Who's gonna do that? Who's going to introduce all those kind of new concepts? Employee onboarding as part of that whole talent experience. Again, artificial intelligence can come in. Some of the mechanical aspects that we do, even within the organization, robotics will come in. We'll need to rethink about the talent. For instance, if you think of the whole loan approval process, in truth, that can be taken over by robotics. Can we then start redefine what those employees as part of our talent then need to do? Lastly, gamification. This is a trend that started a few years ago, where from a learning management perspective, we are finding gamification is coming in to drive the uptake and excitement and engagement and collaboration. And that trend is predicted to be a very big one moving forward in terms of developing talent. Over to you, Paul.
Really fast on this one. I would ask whoever is listening to check Corn Ferry, 8 Imperatives of Reimagining Talent. And they have 8 imperatives. And in there, I'll pick just 4, just for this. And they say the first thing of reimagining talent is make choices and focus. So you can say, what are your critical roles? What are critical capabilities? Look for game changers. You will win in a war. Number 2 is aim for the best, no compromise. You can do anything, but organizations that go for the best, no compromise, will win in the war for talent. And then the last 2, and there are 8 of them, is focus on mindset, not process. So as you work on your talent, and one of the bits they are saying, look at maybe learning agility. And the final one is structure for transformation, not tradition. Really powerful. Focus on transformation, not tradition, because most people will hold the organization driving as if you are looking at their rear mirror instead of looking through a windscreen, because they tell you this is how we have done things here. It will never be relevant. So talent that looks forward, transformation is the in thing in the future of work.
Great. Thank you so much. I think as we wind up, there's a question which I'd like Jared to address. And it's been asked by Mabel Malesu. How does the jobless insurance work?
Okay, thanks, Mabel Malesu, for that question. For all our loan facilities, we underwrite insurance to cover credit, life, and also job losses as a rider to the insurance. So basically, if you lose your job, the expectation is that you'll approach the bank and have a conversation with us, and we'll kickstart the process of ensuring that that cover covers you, or the loan is repaid for a period of 9 months, to give you a humble time to ensure that you are able to prepare for your next move. If either you're looking for a new job or you're getting to your real side hustle, and to be able to service your facility. So at least it gives you comfort and a good time period to get ready for the next phase of your life.
Okay, thank you, Jared. And then this question I'd like Kunle to take. It comes from a gentleman named John Mutura.
Okay.
John is asking, I wish to ask about the use of big data as a business driver. I'll leave out, he's also asking what courses are available in Kenya. And then he said, good conversation. So if you could just address the issue of the use of big data as a business driver. Kunle?
Yeah, big data, so I read somewhere they call it the new oil, right? So it depends on how it's been applied. For example, I'll focus specifically on my industry because, big data essentially is just gathering information and organizing them, looking for patterns, trends, and linking them to various outcomes. In our industry, specifically in my company, we use it particularly to look at trends that look at the relationships between how engaged the workforce is and how it's impacting things that are linked to that, like customer experience. So this is actually something that I guess my colleagues at Safaricom may be interested in. We did a big project for a telecom company that had all kinds of retail locations. And we gathered data for thousands of employees that were interacting with customers. And we looked at all the data on how engaged the workforce in all those locations are. And then we now overlaid that data to the average value, the lifetime value of customers in each of the stores to see if there was a relationship between how engaged the workforce is and how satisfied the customers are, and also the average spend of the customer over a certain number of years. So that's a lot of data. And we're able to make determinations and inferences on how the positive customer experience was actually linked to the stated employee preferences and help the organization to take best practices of certain stores and replicate it in underperforming stores. So that's one example of how you can take extensive quantities of big data and look for patterns, trends. Again, each one has its own use case. It has a business case. And that's all I will say about it. Now, I would strongly, I took a course on machine learning and AI on Coursera. There are a lot of online tools that are actually free. At best, some of them are just $12, $15. So something on machine learning, Coursera, it's put together by a professor at Stanford University, is a fantastic tool. I think it's a 12-hour course. You can take it 2 hours a day for 6 days, spread your time out. And then Udemy is another one. edX is another online platform. So there are lots of online tools for learning about data analytics. If you want to start getting into multivariate regression analysis and like some very sophisticated statistical analysis, because data analytics is all statistics at its heart. There are also courses there, but some of those are not free. So I would suggest you start by looking at Coursera, edX, Udemy. There are lots of data analytics courses you can take there. In 12 hours, 18 hours, you'll be able to get the basics, and from there determine whether it's something you want to continue doing.
Okay, thank you, Kunle. This is the last question, and it's two parts. Actually, there are two questions, but I'd like to just allow the panelists to choose which question they'd like to answer as just part of the closing comments on this Q&A session. So there are two questions. One is coming from Elvis Yizak, and he's asking, this question goes to all the panelists. Any can respond. My question is, what was your initial reaction to the pandemic and all the changes? Were you caught flat-footed? How quickly did you adjust to this situation? Okay, so just your initial reactions. And then the second question is from Tesh. My question is on work-life balance. How do employers promote positive work balance by striking the balance between career and family, and especially during this time that some employees are working from home for the first time? So what was your initial reaction to the pandemic? Were you caught flat-footed? How quickly did you adjust? And then how are we as employers trying to achieve that work-life balance for our employees? So I'd like to have Monica, Paul, and
I can start. So I'll give two things, right? So I think from a BAT perspective, I think it was really good to see that our business continuity plans were good and well done, because I think probably the big companies, you all guys went back to your BCP plans and see what to do. Even if your factory needs to be shut or your distribution channels are not working, so what are the measures to be done? So I think this was a quite agile working that we did to make sure business continuity. And on a personal aspect, just sharing my personal view. So I'm quite a positive person, right? So when this all started, I was a bit skeptic in terms of it won't take long. We will sort things, or even Africa will skip this. I'm quite positive. And then of course time came along, and you see that no, it's not passing. It's going and staying, and it's not going to be a couple of months. It probably will be entire 2020, and now we're already talking about half 2021. And then on a personal view, I think I had to adapt, so quickly understand how I could make my life adaptable to that. So how can I work from home with a little baby, and making sure you deliver, and as a leader you make sure your teams are motivated and you help BAT to go through it in the more smoothly way. But I think it's more about I like a lot what Paul says about mindset, tool set, and skill set, but about mindset is about how positive you are and you face it. So I think this is a bit of me. I look at it everything in a positive way, and I think we are learning so much. And as human beings, as employers and employees, we are going to take a lot of learnings from this period that I'm hope that all the good things we are learning, we're going to take it even after the pandemic is gone.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Diana. I think I can go next. I think the first question is from Elvis on the initial reactions about this pandemic. I don't think that there's anybody who can actually honestly say that they expected COVID-19 in 2020. I can tell you from my perspective, I woke up to 2020 with a lot of optimism, looking for a very bright, and very exciting 2020 with great plans and so on. And so 2020, I think was a pandemic that caught a lot of people and quite by surprise. But the good side of it is that as Ncba and most banks, I think, and most organizations, like Diana has said, you've always had this continuity of business plans. You always test them, stress testing to see should a pandemic or a disaster happen, does the organization have the resilience to actually survive? So the beauty about what has the outcome so far is that we've been able to test our business continuity plans. We've been able to test our resilience, the resilience of our people, the resilience of our leaders. And so I think I would say that, this is a time which is quite unprecedented. And there is no history for us to actually say, this is the model that you apply. So decision making on the go is critical. So having the right leaders who can actually be able to be battle tested leaders. Leaders who can reflect. I know the critics that will be now is able to reflect to that shows of so I think able to a crisis that is on the go. Think how do we ensure that we provide essentials? People will always need food and water, as we said, but I think banking services like we provide in Ncba is an essential service. People will always need money. How do you get the money to them? Because they can no longer feel safe to come to the banking hall. So your technology platforms are being tested for their resilience and efficiency to be able to provide their services at home. Your employees can no longer, come to their workspaces as they used to before. So how quickly we were able to then get everybody to have a laptop for those who needed to work remotely and be able to connect and provide the services to our customers has been very critical. So I would say that it was a disruption, but very positive in the sense that it has created new opportunities. We've been able to to do webinars for over 2,000 employees through digital platforms, and we are connecting with our teams, reskilling our leaders to be able to then say, how do I make sure my team members are safe and they are comfortable to work from home? So I think on the issue of work-life balance, this is an interesting one because we have now found ourselves having to, work in shifts. We have a blue team, we have a red team, and a green team to ensure continuity of business. That should one team be impacted, you can quickly, get that team taken care of in terms of their health and safety, and ensure the premises is safe for the next team to actually provide business continuity. So, that flexibility and ensuring that people can continue to work is very, very, very important. So structures, people are not used to having the house being an office, being a school, being the church. So how you then empowering your staff to have the mindset and the shift that, work is not a place anymore. It is you being able to dress up and show up and actually continue with the optimism that we talked about, that COVID or no COVID, we will show up for you as our customer. We will show up for you as an employee. So I think it's that empathy that we talked about that every leader will have to have now, and treat the people as a human being, to understand that people need to have that balance. So I cannot expect you to work 24/7. I need to then redefine our new working structure. What time do I allow you to do your exercise, to get your breaks? So I think the blend is important, and that's a new way of thinking that we have to shift and be more supportive as leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Paul?
May I? Okay. All right. Before Paul comes on, my reflections on January when we watched China shutting down a province. We monitored it every day. We even checked the population of that province, and we noted it had, it was as big as some of the countries in Africa. Sunny Bindra later wrote an article and called it normalcy bias, where our human tendency is to ignore big events that are very disruptive and somehow hope and assume that it's not going to impact me. And I think for me, the big lesson from a business perspective is, what are the trends I may be missing, both in terms of feedback coming through from customers or trends in the sector or in the market, and how can we be more adaptive? And I think having one plan, because, we all had beautiful plans, as Monica said, for 2020. And when you look at some underlying factors, it's actually, fundamentally a fantastic year from a business perspective, is how do we recognize trends? How do I recognize trends? And how do I have more than a plan, more than one plan, options to respond, I think, to what appears to be disruptive? Because I did challenge myself and reflect deeply why I didn't really have a contingency until, probably the first speech was made and we all scrambled in mid-March. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyrus, for those insights. Thank you. Paul, are you able to give us your closing comments on this, on the two issues, two questions raised?
Yeah, just quickly, I think we had a BCP plan. So the framework is important. Establish a BCP plan. We also were lucky we had started our working from home, flex working. I had 200 of our people working from home from last year, and therefore it was more of how we scale up. The third thing that we thought we had put in place that also helped a lot is our employee assistance program. In terms of our Thrive, how do you talk of the total person? How do you work with people based on their circumstances? And then, as I said, the digital transformation journey was great, as was our culture journey. We had just started our culture at Safaricom, which helped us, and it was more of collaboration and how we work together. However, what we were not prepared for is the pace and magnitude of COVID, because it came in a way that it was literally fast forward. We also discovered that if you look at the issue of the webinars and enabling our people to be productive, that was another big thing. Getting people to work from home and ensuring that at the end of everything, they would have the connectivity, they will have the internet bundles, etc. And then maybe the final one that I would say in terms of what we were not prepared for was just the whole piece of the protocols of health protocols, because we had to look at now, how do you even map your whole 53 shops that we have? How do you look at your workforce? Where do they live? How do they come to work? And how do you ensure duty of care is in place? So I think that was the biggest challenge. In terms of work-life balance, I think what we've worked on is the total well-being of our people. And therefore, doing the surveys has helped us a lot. And we discovered most people are saying, I need some bit of counseling. Initially, it was dealing with fear. Then it was, how do I deal with other non-related work environment, like domestic violence, like financial issues. Everybody's coming to me. They say, you're Safaricom, so you must have billions in your house. How do you deal with that reality? So I think that for us is ensuring that you keep your thumb on the pulse and get to know what are people speaking to what are their realities, and then work with them. Most importantly, I think what has helped is to get the teams to be self-driven. Don't rely on your line managers to manage your 6,000 employees.
Yeah.
Get teams to lead themselves. And what I've discovered is the resources team, which has facilities and resources, 100 people. The guys who run that place are the guys who I call the chief energy officers. They do competitions, we do cooking bits, we do dancing, we do everything. And then so we reach out to one another. And then I also have about 500 trained peer counselors who help each other as we walk along.
Thank you so much, Paul, for those insights. And I really like the concept of chief energy, the chief energy officer. Yeah, something that really during this time we actually need as individuals in the workplace. And with those few questions and answers, I think we have to close this session. And I'd like to just say we've had a very engaging conversation on the future of work and employee engagement. COVID-19 has reminded us that people are motivated at the highest levels when they can connect with their work contribution for a greater purpose and mission. Before COVID, few companies had even considered a remote work program. Now, almost all companies are rushing to build remote work strategies. Through this crisis, we have had the opportunity to see the resilience and adaptability of the workforce to the new normal. Our definition of the office and workday has changed a lot since early this year. It's gone from our desk in the office to, to the kitchen tables, to the couches at home. Today, workday has become whatever slot you can fit in. Yeah. Obviously, one of the biggest challenge to remote teams is the uphill battle to build and maintain a sense of team cohesion and companionship with optimum productivity. The core message from today's conversation is clear. The future of work is not predetermined. It's up to us to shape it. I'd like to just take this opportunity to thank all participants on this webinar. We'll continue engaging with you on our social media platforms. And I'd also like to give a tremendous thank you and gratitude to all the speakers and the panelists. Thank you for taking the time to share your expertise and experience by contributing to this very relevant topic. To the rest of our participants, we are grateful for your presence and your contribution to this conversation, which has made all the difference. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.